Another quick smile, and she was gone. Then Bill O'Connell congratulated me, and I told him I thought the program books were excellent. John Stamford also offered his best wishes, mentioning how much the factory staff was still talking about the performance. I managed to slip away to a corner and looked around for Mark. He was deep in conversation with a young man I didn't know, and I thought I might not get that drink after all. "Congratulations, Miss Grant," a deep voice said, and I quickly turned to greet the well-wisher but gasped in surprise. "Oh," was all I could say when I saw Alexander Edwards standing before me, a big smile on his face, with 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. "Your friend," he nodded toward Mark, "asked me to bring your champagne." Of course, I was happy to. "Do you remember me?" Of course, Alexander Edwards, isn't it? The one who kindly gave us champagne when we were celebrating rather noisily in that restaurant?" He gave a slight bow and offered a champagne flute. "More champagne?" he asked with a twinkle in his eye. "I think you lit up the restaurant." He raised his glass in a toast. "Here's to an extraordinary woman who is as talented as she is beautiful." I flushed, sipping the champagne. "Thank you." I thoroughly enjoyed the performance. My companion was teary-eyed, but the first to stand when the applause started. "Companion?" I wondered. "Who is he with?" "Thank you, but I think you're being very flattering." "Do you mind if I introduce you to my companion?" he asked. "I'm sure she'd love to meet you." "He wants me to meet his date?" I thought, feeling a bit miffed. "Of course," I said coolly. Alexander disappeared into the crowd, quickly returning with an elderly woman in a floor-length evening gown and an embroidered shawl. "Miss Grant," he said, "I'd like you to meet my mother, Mary Edwards." His mother? Why did I feel relieved by that? Mrs. Edwards smiled and took my hand. "An extraordinary performance, Miss Grant." "Really extraordinary." I thoroughly enjoyed it, even though it was quite an emotional journey. "Thank you," I said, smiling. "But please, call me Clara," I said, glancing under my lashes at Alexander, "both of you. When I saw you walk onto the stage, I could see why Alexander hasn't stopped talking about you, but close up, you're even more beautiful." My face burned, and I noticed Alexander's face turning red at his mother's comments. "Mother, really," he said, trying to smile. "I'm glad he met you, Clara," she said with a wink. "I don't think he would have bothered getting tickets to the opening night of a play without meeting you." "Oh," I said to Alexander, raising an eyebrow, "you don't enjoy the theater?" "I do now," he said simply, and his mother laughed. "Alexander, we must let Clara greet her other guests," she said, ushering me forward. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "And you, Mrs. Edwards." "No, please, call me Mary," she said with a wave. As Alexander escorted her away, he grinned and nodded. "I see he came back," Belle said. "Yes," I said dreamily. "He did, didn't he?" She tugged at my elbow, joking, "Steady on, young lady. Let's not get all tardy now." It wouldn't do. The party ended, and the cast, supporting crew, family, and friends adjourned to a private room in a restaurant to await the reviews. It was there I gave Mark the wrist chain I had purchased weeks earlier. "Thank you," I said simply, handing it to him. "Thank you for, well, everything." He was taken aback but then smiled. "You're welcome." I noticed Rodney was seated next to Belle and talking animatedly. When I looked closer, I saw she was enjoying his attention. "So much for having a crush on me," I thought with a grin, and was glad for Belle. Charlotte was deep in conversation with Simon, so I looked around for a seat and began sitting down at the lower side of the table with some of the backstage crew. The crew grinned in surprise, clearly pleased. "Hello, Billy," I greeted as I took a seat, nodding at the others. Billy, head of lighting, had been with the company for many seasons. "Hello, love," he replied. "Cracker job out there, you were just perfect." Me and the lads were saying just that. I leaned forward, and they all followed suit. "That's nice of you," I said in my best Liverpudlian accent, "but I'm tired of hearing all that. Where can a girl get a drink?" They chuckled and poured some white wine, which I took a sip of. "Hey, Billy," I said, still in the accent, "about the lights at the end." "What?" He looked at me, brow furrowed, and the rest of the crew fell silent. "They were perfect," I added. "Cracker job, love." The crew burst into loud laughter, and Billy chuckled. "You're a breath of fresh air, love." "You really are, but," he nodded toward the head of the table, "I think they want you up there." Henri was gesturing toward the empty chair at the end of the table, and Monica appeared at my elbow. "I know this is where the fun is," she said with a smile and a wink at the crew, "but the star belongs up there." "Go on, love," Billy said, "do us proud." I sighed and let Monica guide me to the head of the table. As I sat down, the cast and company erupted into applause. "I get applause for just sitting down?" I asked, feigning surprise. "This acting thing is easier than I thought." Laughter filled the room, and the atmosphere relaxed as the first course was served. Henri sat to my right, Sarah to my left, with Monica next to her. Belinda was laughing at something Rodney said, and Mark was deep in conversation with Charlotte when Henri stood, tapping his knife against his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, just a few words before the reviews come in. Frankly, I don't care what the critics say, I think we all know we were part of something special tonight." "Hear, hear." Humpy chimed in, and Simon nodded in agreement. "I'd like to thank Sarah Wright for allowing our company to present her new, stunning work," Henri continued, and applause circled the table as Sarah nodded and smiled. "And I'd like to thank all of you for your outstanding contributions that have ensured tonight will have a place in theatrical history." Henri sat down to applause, and Humpy stood, raising his glass. "A toast, ladies and gentlemen," he boomed in his best Henry VIII voice. "To our small company." "To our small company," everyone echoed, followed by a moment of silence before conversations resumed. After the second course, Henri returned with newspapers in hand, passing them around. "Clara?" Henri offered me a copy, but I shook my head, suddenly feeling nauseous. Charlotte went straight to Laura Wood's review and cleared her throat. "First one," she announced, and the room fell silent, everyone eager to hear. I looked around, suddenly feeling the need to escape the room, but Sarah gently squeezed my hand. "This is the hardest part," she said softly, "but it'll be fine." I smiled at her, grateful for the support, as Charlotte began reading. "A few nights ago, I had the pleasure of attending the dress rehearsal for Sarah Wright's new play, Silken Memories. I believe it is Miss Wright's best work, but it is a difficult play. The actor portraying Simone, the leading role, faces the challenging task of taking the audience on an emotional and deeply psychological journey. To say that Catherine Grant's performance as Simone was outstanding would be a vast understatement. I thought I had seen perfection, but I was wrong. Last night, I attended the opening performance of Silken Memories, and Miss Grant was spectacular, delivering a performance that had me in tears by the second act and cheering for Simone by the final words. I'll say it first, tonight, a new star has risen in British theatre, and I'm sure she will shine for many years to come." At those words, Charlotte lowered the newspaper, and the table erupted into applause for a moment before she continued. "Sir Humphrey Barton gave an excellent performance, and I personally think it was one of his best in contemporary theatre. The confrontational scenes between Sir Humphrey and Miss Grant were electric. Simon Thompson showed a depth of acting that hasn't been seen before, using his physicality to portray the despair and defeat of Tom, the estranged husband." Charlotte finished reading, and I sat quietly, toying with my glass, only half listening. It suddenly hit me that I didn't care much about the review. The joy was in the performance itself, the connection with the audience, and helping them experience something new. I was jolted out of my thoughts when I noticed they had stopped reading and were all staring at me, their faces beaming with smiles. Sir Humphrey stood again. "Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses and be upstanding. A toast to the newest star, a great actor, and a friend to many, Miss Catherine Grant." Miss Catherine Grant, they all echoed, and I smiled weakly, blinking back tears that were dangerously close to falling. Speech, speech, they chanted, clapping, and I stood, unsteadily, to address the room. Isn't this all rather nice? I said, slipping into my Liverpool accent, causing everyone to burst into laughter. But, I'm terribly embarrassed by it all, I added in my refined accent once the laughter subsided. I really am. You deserve it, Jell, one of the crew called out, and everyone nodded in agreement. I think we all deserve it, I said with a smile, because this wouldn't have happened with just one person. Billy and the lads always made sure the props were in place, kept putting marks down for me, and of course, the cracker job with the lights. Laughter filled the room again. Beth May, who made the wonderful costumes. Everyone, I could go on, but, I winked, that's Richard's job. More laughter followed as Simon playfully jabbed Richard in the ribs. I'd like to thank Belinda and my friend Mark, I continued, we've known each other since school and have helped each other through whatever we've attempted. I couldn't have made it here without them. Applause broke out as Belle and Mark grinned, raising their glasses to me. And the formidable Charlotte Richards, who keeps me in line. She keeps everyone in line. Simon joked, pretending to be miserable. I could thank Humby, Simon, and Richard, but we've got 3 months to go in the season, and I'm sure I'll annoy them along the way, so I'll save that for the end of the season, I said with a grin. I waited for the laughter to die down. And lastly, I'd like to thank the audience. Without them, we have no purpose. I sat down and Henri whispered, have you considered politics? Cheeky sod, I murmured, and he laughed. They continued reading more reviews, passing around pages with photographs. The one of Belle, Mark, Charlotte, and me appeared in most of the pages with the title Star Celebrates with Friends. There was also a photo of Mark and me moving through the crowd, holding hands, titled Star's Childhood Sweetheart. Mark laughed loudly at that. Belle, Mark, Charlotte, and I were unusually silent in the cab as we made our way to Belle's flat. What's wrong? I asked, noticing their thoughtful expressions. Well, you did it, Belle said. Yes, I sighed, slumping onto the sofa and kicking off my heels. I did. So, Charlotte prompted, now what? What do you mean? Is that it? Is Clara Grant retiring from acting? Charlotte, Belle, and Mark exchanged glances. We thought you might give it up after you achieved your dream. I said with a sly smile, I did say that, or hinted at it, didn't I? You did, Mark said seriously. Can't a girl change her mind? Charlotte grinned. You're going on with the season? Too late to stop now, I murmured, leaning back, eyes closed. And, of course, I knew deep down, I didn't want to stop. Then the hard work began, playing Simone 6 nights a week for 6 weeks. It was exhausting, but we got into the routine and kept the spark alive. Audiences flocked to see the play, and Henri enthusiastically told us that the first 4 weeks were sellouts, with tickets still in demand for the rest of the season. That's when Henri began talking about a second season and started searching for an actor to play Simone. Apparently, the last performance of this company was completely sold out. Once a fortnight, I treated myself to a salon visit, facials, eyelash extensions, the works. Belle insisted on doing my hair but also taught me many new ways of styling it and doing my makeup. My chest had become quite uncomfortable, and Helen expressed surprise when she examined me. Your own chests have grown dramatically, she said with a smile. A definite A cup now. I stared down, surprised. Are you still committed to this, Clara? Yes, I really want to do this, Helen. Then I'll make an appointment for you with Vincent Singh. I've already spoken to him. I looked away, then hesitantly asked, does he know? Helen shook her head. As far as he's concerned, you're just another woman wanting chest enhancement. In today's world, it's nothing unusual. He's had many show business patients and understands the need for discretion. He's excellent, and he's very proud of his work. What about when I'm under anesthetic? The operation is quick, and the anesthetic is light, so no need for a catheter. You'll have someone with you, right? I nodded. Good. Relax, Clara. Should I arrange your initial consultation for Friday morning? Yes, please. When? I'll try for Friday morning. You'll have to go back to the flexible chest forms for now, no more glue. Helen was right, Vincent Singh was fantastic. He explained everything thoroughly. The scars will be under the chests, and they won't be visible after a while. You've decided on a D cup? He smiled. I blushed and nodded. It's the size I've been, you know. I completely understand, and it suits you perfectly. You'll have someone to stay with you, right? I insist that patients stay at least one night. Yes, I do. I told Charlotte I was worried about the cost, and she smiled. Don't worry, Clara. Well, I do. It's a lot of money. I know, but I have a deal lined up from Sasha Cosmetics. I hear you know the director of marketing? Charlotte asked slyly, grinning at me. Yes, I do. They're interested in using you to promote a line of lip gloss and eyeshadow. It'll be billboards and magazine ads at first, but they're offering $50,000 for just one photo. They also want an exclusivity agreement for 2 years. Interested? Yes, it sounds great. When? I've said no until after the first season, once you've had a chance to relax. They'll do the shoot then, and they've agreed. Should I say yes? I could really use the money, Charlotte. Saying yes will make me feel better about spending so much on the operation. I picked up my bag. Who are you talking to at Sasha? I asked casually, though she wasn't fooled. A young man called Byron Goodwood. Do you know him? She asked innocently. No, I don't. Apparently, the director of marketing suggested he have a look at you. I see, I said, trying to stay cool. I have to run, I'm late. Okay, I'll tell you later what Byron said his boss called you. She grinned widely as I turned back. What? Thinking man's crumpet. Oh my, I said, my face burning. Everyone was looking forward to the mid-season break. It was the time to unwind while the backstage crew did repairs and maintenance, props were refreshed, and the actors had a chance to recharge. We all seemed to be heading in different directions. Simon was off to America to promote his movie, Humpy was going to his country house, and Richard planned to go fishing. When they asked me, I shrugged it off, saying I might go walking in Scotland or something. I hadn't decided yet. In truth, I was heading straight to Dr. Singh's private practice for the operation. Finally, I would have real chests. When I woke up, I felt a bit nauseous, but Belinda reassured me it was just the effects of the anesthetic. After a while, the sickness faded, though a dull pain settled in my chest. Belinda saw my grimace and smiled sympathetically. Everything went fine. Dr. Singh said it was perfect. I resisted looking at the hospital gown but noticed some bandages peeking through the neckline. I could tell my new chests were larger than before. I felt a strange sense of pride inside, leaning back with my eyes closed. I must have dozed off, because when I woke up, the nurse was giving me an injection for pain. There you go, she said with a smile. Belinda helped me drink some water, then assisted me to the bathroom and back to bed, where she sat by my side as I dozed again. The next day, I felt much better, though the pain in my chest was more persistent. Belinda came in with a smile. Good morning, sleepyhead. I'll get some breakfast. Before I could protest, she returned with a tray. I managed to eat a little, and the nurse came by to help me wash up and prepare to go home. She told me the bandages would be removed the next day during my follow-up appointment. I was careful all day at the flat, and Belinda fussed over me. The pain wasn't unbearable, but it was noticeable. When the bandages came off the next day, I stared at them, wondering what my new chests would look like. Later that evening, when I was feeling much better, Belle and I were watching television, and I cheekily asked, "So, what's going on with you and Rodney?" Belle turned red. "We're just friends, that's all." "Friends like you and me?" I raised an eyebrow. "Well, not exactly like that," she said. "Like you and Mark, then?" "No, it's different. We just talk about things." "I've noticed," I grinned. "You two look good together." "You think so?" she asked anxiously. "Clara, I really like him." "I know. He's cute." The next day, Nurse Carol came in to remove the bandages. I felt a little nervous, but she reassured me with a smile. "Don't worry, Clara. Dr. Singh is the best, and he was really proud of his work." The process was quick and painless, and soon I was staring at my new chests. Despite some bruising, they looked incredible, and I felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. "They are swollen," Carol said gently, "so they'll look bigger than you expected. The swelling should go down by tomorrow night, but the bruising will take a little longer." Carol carefully examined the scars under each chest and introduced me to the surgical bra I'd need to wear for the next few days. Dr. Singh breezed in, repeating how proud he was of his work and reassuring me of the confidentiality. As Belle and I drove home, she asked, "Happy?" "Yes, very happy." The swelling went down quickly, and the bruising faded too. On stage, I was sometimes uncomfortable, but I managed to hide it well. When I accidentally bumped into a chair on my first day back, I winced. Richard had called a meeting to refocus us after the break, and everyone was talking about their time off. Humpy noticed my grimace and asked, "Clara, everything okay?" I thought fast. "I bruised myself while hiking in Scotland, that's all." He rolled his eyes at the idea of such a barbaric activity, and the meeting continued. Belle and I had bought a few more bras, and I loved how natural my chests felt now. They were truly a part of me. The chest forms had felt so fake in comparison, though I was the only one who could really tell the difference. I had mentioned to Helen that I was experiencing some back pain, and she had laughed. "You've got a little more weight in the front now, Clara. You need to support them and work on your back muscles." 2 weeks later, Charlotte brought flowers and a bottle of wine to celebrate. After a few glasses, Belle and Charlotte exchanged strange smiles as they stared at me. "What?" I asked, curious. "Come on," Charlotte grinned. "Come on, what?" "Give us a peek." Belle nodded. "Come on, we've been dying to see." "I don't. It's just us girls." With a sigh, I pulled my top off over my head. I was wearing a blue lace underwire bra, and both girls stared in amazement. "Wow," Belle said. "Now that's cleavage." "There," I said, shrugging. "Is that all we get to see?" "Yes." "Oh, come on," they begged. I sighed and unsnapped my bra. "Wow," Charlotte said, eyes wide. "They're perfect," Belle whispered. "There are no scars." I quickly put my bra and top back on. "Are you still happy?" Belle gently asked. "More than anything." I wore a low-cut black top with string straps, paired with jeans, boots, and my favorite new leather jacket to a cast meeting. I had been borrowing Belle's jacket for so long, I finally bought one of my own. It was soft black leather from Italy, and I loved it. I sat down beside Humpy, took out my notebook, and suddenly realized the room had gone quiet. I looked around, confused. "What?" I asked, and the men quickly became absorbed in their notebooks and clipboards. "Nothing," Richard said. "Nothing," Simon echoed, but his eyes flicked to my chest. I smiled and bent over my notebook, pretending not to notice. Monica came up to me after the meeting. "So," she said with a sly smile, "about time you stopped hiding your assets." She winked and moved off to talk to Henri. Only 3 weeks left until the season ended. It had become a grind, and while I'd miss working with everyone, I was ready for a break and needed time to make some decisions. One morning, Charlotte called, giggling. Guess what? I'm too tired to guess. Someone called me today and wanted to know if I could give him your phone number. Who? Alexander Edwards. I froze. Oh. Did you give it to him? Of course not, she said, offended. I don't give out my clients' private numbers. Well, I did tell him I'd call you to see if you wanted him to have it. Oh, I said, my heart pounding. Do you want me to give him your number? Charlotte asked gently. I don't know, Charlotte, I hesitated. You like him, don't you? Yes, I admitted. So? I took a deep breath. Give him the number. We were shopping for dresses for the end-of-season party when Belle casually mentioned she was officially dating Rodney. Charlotte and I hugged her and congratulated her. While we were taking a break in a coffee shop, Charlotte casually asked, "What's he like in bed?" I was shocked, but also intrigued, and covered my mouth with my fingers as I waited for Belle's answer. She was a bit flushed but grinning. Not bad, she said with a wink, and we all burst out laughing. We passed by a shop window when I saw it, a red off-the-shoulder dress, low-cut but form-fitting. Belle and Charlotte laughed when they saw the look on my face. I think we just found Clara's dress, Charlotte said to Belle. It fit perfectly, and I posed in front of them. Well, that's good, Belle said, looking at me with a satisfied expression. I won't have to do your makeup for the party. I pouted. Why not? Because no man will be looking at your face all night, Belle said matter-of-factly. Charlotte shrieked with laughter, and I pretended to sulk. Did you see the reaction when she wore that black top? Belle giggled. No, Charlotte said, I wasn't there, tell me. Don't, I warned. Should I get this dress? I asked. Truly, Charlotte said, it's perfect. You look fantastic in it, so buy it. As I was paying for the dress, the cashier kept staring at me. Excuse me, Miss Grant, she said, looking at my credit card. I've seen your photograph in the newspapers, haven't I? You may have, I said cautiously. She nodded. I knew you were a model or something. We were having lunch when my phone rang. I quickly pulled it from my bag, trying not to look embarrassed as some of the other diners gave me annoyed glances. Hello? Hello, Clara, a deep voice said, sending a ripple through my chest. This is Alexander. I hope it's not inconvenient to call? No, I croaked, holding the phone away for a moment to clear my throat. No, of course not. Charlotte Richards gave me your number, so... It's perfectly fine, Alexander, I said, noticing both Charlotte and Belinda raising their eyebrows at me. Well, I was hoping, he stumbled, sounding nervous, I mean, if you were willing and I was acceptable company, of course, if you would consider having supper with me after your performance? I could feel my heart pounding. What should I do? My friends were staring at me, faces serious. I made up my mind. What harm could there be in having supper? I would love that, Alexander. When were you thinking? I could hear the relief in his voice. Any night, tonight perhaps? Tonight? Belle and Charlotte frantically shook their heads. I'm sorry, Alexander, I can't tonight. Tomorrow night, perhaps? That will be wonderful, he said eagerly. I'm new to the theater, he added, and I thought, I'm new to being a woman. Do I come backstage, Clara? Yes, I'll let Rodney know you'll be coming. I hung up, and both girls were grinning. Why not tonight? I asked. Belle rolled her eyes. You just have to get a new dress. And it's good to let him wait, Charlotte smiled, calling the waiter over for the bill. We'll find your outfit. I could wear my new dress. On a first date? Belle laughed. There's a real tart hiding under that angelic exterior, Charlotte. I blushed while Charlotte rolled her eyes. Hardly angelic, Belle. We decided on a simple dark blue soft dress. As the shop assistant wrapped it, I suddenly felt nervous, the reality of what I had agreed to sinking in. "What's his number, Charlotte?" I asked frantically after I took the bag and stepped outside. "I need to call him, tell him I can't make it." "No," I added, struck with a new thought. "Charlotte, you call him. Tell him I'm ill or tired or—" "Calm down, Clara," Charlotte said gently. "Call him." I insisted. "All right," Charlotte said with a glance at Belle. "I'll do it later. Shall we take a taxi to the theater?" I sat quietly in the cab, my mind racing. The girls stayed silent until we were in the dressing room. Finally, I spoke in a low voice. "Don't call him, Charlotte." "I can't do that, can I?" Belle and Charlotte shook their heads. "No," Belle said softly. "I'm sorry, Charlotte, for yelling at you," I murmured, my eyes filling with tears. I panicked. "I know, it's understandable." Belle sat down next to me. "There's nothing to panic about, Clara. You've stood up and performed your heart out in front of thousands. You've bared your soul." I flinched at her intensity. "But it's just supper, Clara, nothing more. Don't make it a big deal, okay? Just relax." Her tone softened. "Do you understand?" "I think so." "Thanks, you too." "I'm a goose." "It's natural," Belle said, hugging me. "Natural?" I said a bit bitterly. "Yes," Charlotte replied seriously. "I was terrified on my first date." "What about you, Belle?" "I was physically sick 3 times before he picked me up." "Really?" I asked, amused. "Oh yes. I have a few horror stories," Belle winked. "I'm still having them," Charlotte said sadly, and I hugged her. "I'm really sorry, Charlotte. I was a bitch. Miss Hoity-toity." "Please," I laughed. "Don't start." "You'll be fine," Belle said, glancing at me in the mirror. I was trembling, heart racing. I had seen Alexander waiting in the corridor as I came off stage. Belle rushed me past him, saying, "Give her time to change?" "Of course," he smiled, and I gave him a nervous smile in return. "You can't keep him waiting forever, Clara," Belle said gently. "I know." "Belle," I said, turning to her and taking her hand, "am I doing the right thing? Going for supper?" "You have to eat, Clara. Why not with someone you like?" I know. But am I deceiving him?" "Clara," Belle said seriously, "in my mind, and in everyone's mind, you're a woman. You think like one, you're one. You're not acting, it's who you are, right?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Then you're not deceiving him unless," she added with a cheeky grin, "you're thinking about marriage?" "Belle." "Well, get a move on, the poor dear has been waiting for 30 minutes. I took a deep breath, stood up, and kissed Belle's cheek. "Thanks, Belle, you're a real friend." I was sitting at lunch when my phone rang. Quickly, I grabbed it from my bag and tried not to feel embarrassed as some of the diners cast annoyed glances my way. "Hello?" "Hello, Clara," a deep voice said, sending a ripple of recognition through me. "This is Alexander. I hope I'm not interrupting?" "No," I croaked, holding the phone away momentarily to clear my throat. "No, of course not. Charlotte Richards gave me your number, so—" "It's perfectly fine, Alexander," I said, noticing Belinda and Charlotte raising their eyebrows. "I was hoping," he stumbled nervously, "I mean, if you're willing and I'm acceptable company, of course, if you'd consider joining me for supper after your performance?" My heart skipped. What should I do? My friend's serious expressions made it clear they were waiting for my response. I made up my mind. What could go wrong with supper? I'd love that, Alexander. When were you thinking? I could hear the relief in his voice. Any night, tonight perhaps? Tonight? Belle and Charlotte immediately shook their heads. I'm sorry, Alexander, I can't tonight, but maybe tomorrow night? Tomorrow sounds wonderful, he said eagerly. I'm new to theater, he added. And I thought, I'm new to being a woman. Should I come backstage, Clara? Yes, I'll let Rodney know you'll be coming. I hung up, and both girls were grinning at me. Why not tonight? I asked. Belle rolled her eyes. You just have to get a new dress. And it's good to let him wait, Charlotte smiled, signaling the waiter for the bill. We'll find your outfit. I could wear my new dress. On a first date? Belle laughed. There's a real tart hiding under that angelic exterior, Charlotte. I blushed while Charlotte rolled her eyes. Hardly angelic, Belle. We decided on a simple, dark blue dress. As the shop assistant wrapped it up, I suddenly felt nervous. The realization of what I had agreed to began to hit me. What's his number, Charlotte? I asked frantically as we stepped outside. I need to call him and tell him I can't make it. No! I suddenly had a new thought. Charlotte, you call him. Tell him I'm ill or tired or... Calm down, Clara, Charlotte said softly. Call him. I insisted. All right, Charlotte said with a glance at Belle. I'll do it later. Shall we take a taxi to the theater? I sat silently in the cab, my mind racing. The girls stayed quiet until we reached the dressing room. Finally, I spoke in a low voice. Don't call him, Charlotte. I can't do that, can I? Belle and Charlotte shook their heads. No, Belle said quietly. I'm sorry, Charlotte, for yelling at you, I murmured, my eyes filling with tears. I panicked. I know, it's understandable. Belle sat down next to me. There's nothing to panic about, Clara. You've stood up and performed your heart out in front of thousands. You've bared your soul. I flinched at her intensity. But... It's just supper, Clara, nothing more. Don't make it a big deal, okay? Just relax. Her tone softened. Do you understand? I think so. Thanks, you too. I'm a goose. It's natural, Belle said, hugging me. Natural? I said a little bitterly. Yes, Charlotte replied seriously. I was terrified on my first date. What about you, Belle? I was physically sick 3 times before he picked me up. Really? I asked, amused. Oh yes. I have a few horror stories, Belle winked. I'm still having them, Charlotte said sadly, and I hugged her. I'm really sorry, Charlotte. I was a bitch. Miss Hoity-toity. Please, I laughed. Don't start. You'll be fine, Belle said, glancing at me in the mirror. I was trembling, heart racing. I had seen Alexander waiting in the corridor as I came off stage. Belle rushed me past him, saying, "Give her time to change?" Of course, he smiled, and I gave him a nervous smile in return. You can't keep him waiting forever, Clara, Belle said gently. I know. Belle, I said, turning to her and taking her hand, am I doing the right thing? Going for supper? You have to eat, Clara. Why not with someone you like? I know. But am I deceiving him? Clara, Belle said seriously, in my mind, and in everyone's mind, you're a woman. You think like one, you are one. You're not acting, it's who you are, right? Yes, I said quietly. Then you're not deceiving him unless, she added with a cheeky grin, you're thinking about marriage? Belle. Well, get a move on, the poor dear has been waiting for 30 minutes. I took a deep breath, stood up, and kissed Belle's cheek. Thanks, Belle, you're a real friend. Barbara Wilkins, she said, clearly surprised. It's a pleasure to meet you, Barbara. Thank you for the compliment. As I sat down, Alexander smiled. You came back. Did you doubt me? I laughed, starting to eat. After a moment, I noticed Alexander's eyes on me. You're not eating? Alexander looked flustered. Well, of course, I'm sorry. I must apologize, but you have the most extraordinary eyes. They're this mixture of blue, violet, and green. Quite beautiful, actually. I smiled. Alexander Edwards, I teased softly, I thought you were terrible with women. The evening went on, and it wasn't long before it was time to leave. I can take a taxi home, I said, there's no need to escort me. My dear Miss Grant, he quickly replied, it would be unforgivable not to escort you. In the taxi, his leg brushed against mine, and I could feel his gaze on me. I had a wonderful time, I said, trying to fill the silence. I hope you're not just saying that because you feel obligated. I had a magnificent evening, though I must apologize again for my earlier remark. You don't think I'm crumpet? I teased. Most definitely, incredibly so. As the taxi pulled up, I wondered if he was going to send it off, assuming he'd come in with me. Instead, he asked the driver to wait, then walked me to the door. Thank you for joining me, he said, his formal tone making me smile. Thank you for inviting me, I replied. He turned to leave, then stopped, almost as if he had made up his mind to do something. He turned back to me. Clara, I'd be foolish not to ask, but is there a possibility we could meet again in a social sense? I know you lead a very busy life, but I'm hopeful we could be friends. Social sense? I raised an eyebrow. God, I'm messing this up, aren't I? I placed my hand on his arm and looked up at him. Alexander, I'd love to, but not until after this season is over. I have more time then, and I'd love to do something in a social sense. I'm happy to have you as a friend. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something more serious, but instead, he smiled wryly. Of course, thank you, Clara. He turned and walked back to the taxi. I wondered why he didn't try to kiss me. Would I have let him if he had? You're friends, I reminded myself, that's all, and that's all it should be. Well? Belinda asked the next morning as I made tea and toast in the kitchen. Well, what? I asked, playing innocent. You know, what happened? She was in her dressing gown, and I was wearing a huge t-shirt and underwear. It was a wonderful night, I said. I laughed a lot, and he's kind of attractive, in a very restrained, terribly English way. Did he kiss you? No, I replied, buttering the toast furiously. He was the perfect gentleman. Did you want him to? Belinda asked slyly, and I blushed. I'm not sure, I answered honestly. Besides, we're friends. A noise came from her bedroom, and I looked at her. What's that? She blushed deeply. Rodney stayed over last night. You don't mind, do you? I walked up to her, holding my tea in one hand and toast in the other, and whispered, Was that you screaming out in passion last night? I thought it was Mrs. Barnes' cat. You bitch! Belinda laughed, chasing me. The door opened, and Rodney stood there in his boxer shorts. He turned bright red when he saw me with Belinda. Good morning, Rodney, I sang as I ran past him. Lovely underpants. He was mortified that you saw him like that, Belinda laughed as she quickly styled my hair for the final act. He saw me in my t-shirt, I pouted. I was so embarrassed. You were not. Apparently, he told Billy and the crew about it, and they wanted descriptions of what Rodney was wearing. I teased, and we both burst out laughing. Henri approached me after the performance to introduce me to Amanda Donovan, the actor playing Simone in the second season. Congratulations, I smiled. Thanks, but after watching you tonight, I've got big shoes to fill. Nonsense. Interpret Simone in the way that feels right for you. Every season is different. Now, Clara, Helen said as she finished the examination, the blood tests show you've always had a lower level of male hormones. What does that mean? I asked, confused as I changed behind the screen. She shrugged. It may not mean anything, but it does explain why the hormones I prescribed have been so effective. Look. She showed me a chart with outlines of 2 body shapes. This was you when I first examined you. As you can see, you had the beginnings of a female shape. Now, with the hormones and surgery, the changes are remarkable. The biggest changes have been to your hips, waist, bottom, and of course, your chests. You have a figure to die for. We'll continue the hormones, but I'll slightly adjust the dosage. I nodded silently. What, Clara? Helen prodded gently. I'm thinking about, other things. I shifted in my chair, unsure how to explain. As I sat down, Alexander smiled at me. You came back. Did you doubt me? I laughed, taking a bite of my meal. After a moment, I noticed Alexander staring at me. You're not eating? Alexander seemed flustered. Well, of course, I'm sorry. I must apologize, but you have the most extraordinary eyes. They're a mixture of blue, violet, and green. Quite beautiful, actually. I smiled. Alexander Edwards, I teased softly, I thought you were terrible with women. The evening continued, and before I knew it, it was time to leave. I can take a taxi home, I said, there's no need to escort me. My dear Miss Grant, he quickly replied, it would be unforgivable of me not to escort you. In the taxi, I could feel his leg brushing against mine, and I could sense his eyes on me, watching. I had a wonderful time, I said to break the silence. I hope you're not just saying that because you feel obligated. I had a magnificent evening, except for my unforgivable remark. Once again, I apologize for that. You don't think I'm crumpet? I teased. Most definitely, incredibly so. The taxi pulled up, and I wondered if he'd send the car off, assuming he was coming in. He didn't. He asked the driver to wait and walked me to the door. Thank you for joining me, he said in his formal tone. Thank you for inviting me, I smiled. He turned to leave, but stopped, as if making up his mind to say something. Clara, I'd be foolish not to ask, but is there a possibility we could meet again in a social sense? I know you lead a very busy life, but I hope we could be friends. Social sense? I raised an eyebrow. God, I'm messing this up, aren't I? I placed my hand on his arm and looked up at him. Alexander, I'd love to, but not until after this season. I'll have more time then, and I'd love to do something in a social sense. I'm happy to have you as a friend. For a moment, I thought he might say something more serious, but instead, he smiled wryly. Of course, thank you, Clara. He turned and walked to the taxi, and I couldn't help but wonder why he didn't try to kiss me. Would I have let him? You're friends, I reminded myself. That's all, and that's all it should be. Well? Belinda asked the next morning as I made tea and toast in the kitchen. Well, what? I asked, feigning innocence. You know, what happened? She was in her dressing gown, and I was wearing a loose t-shirt and knickers. It was a wonderful night, I said. I laughed a lot, and he's kind of attractive in a very restrained, terribly English way. Did he kiss you? No, I replied, buttering my toast. He was the perfect gentleman. Did you want him to? Belinda asked slyly, and I blushed. I'm not sure, I answered honestly. Besides, we're friends. A noise came from her bedroom, and I looked at her. What's that? She blushed deeply. Rodney stayed over last night. You don't mind, do you? I walked over to her, tea in hand, and whispered, Was that you screaming out in passion last night? I thought it was Mrs. Barnes' cat. You bitch. Belinda laughed, chasing me. The door opened, and Rodney stood there in his boxer shorts. He turned bright red when he saw me with Belinda. Good morning, Rodney, I sang as I ran past him. Lovely underpants. He was mortified that you saw him like that, Belinda laughed as she quickly styled my hair for the final act. He saw me in my t-shirt, I pouted. I was so embarrassed. You were not. Apparently, he told Billy and the crew about it, and they wanted descriptions of what Rodney was wearing. I teased, and we both laughed. Henri approached me after the performance to introduce me to Amanda Donovan, the actress playing Simone in the second season. Congratulations, I smiled. Thanks, but after watching you tonight, I've got big shoes to fill. Nonsense. Interpret Simone the way you feel comfortable. Each season is different. Now, Clara, Helen said as she finished the examination, the blood tests show you've always had a lower level of male hormones. What does that mean? I asked, confused as I changed behind the screen. She shrugged. It may not mean anything, but it does explain why the hormones I prescribed have been so effective. Look. She showed me a chart with outlines of 2 body shapes. This was you when I first examined you. As you can see, you had the beginnings of a female shape. Now, with the hormones and surgery, the changes are remarkable. The biggest changes have been to your hips, waist, bottom, and of course, your chests. You have a figure to die for. We'll continue the hormones, but I'll slightly adjust the dosage. I nodded silently. What, Clara? Helen prodded gently. I'm thinking about, other things. I shifted in my chair, unsure how to explain. Alexander, I said, smiling as I opened the door. No, you're not disturbing me. I'm happy you're here. He straightened up quickly, glancing around at the dresses hanging on the wall, the cosmetics on the dressing table, and the flowers. I just had to congratulate you, Clara. You were extraordinary. Did you watch? I asked, brushing my hair nervously. He nodded, I did. I had to bribe a friend to get a ticket, but it was worth it. Congratulations again. Alexander smiled and reached for the door handle. I'll leave you to your party. I'll see you at the photo shoot. Not so fast, I said in my Liverpool accent. Then, switching to my normal tone, I added, I'd love for you to accompany me now, if that's all right? A broad grin spread across his face, but it quickly vanished. I wouldn't want to intrude. You won't. I want you to come. Now, I have to get dressed. I'll wait outside, he said quickly, then disappeared. When he saw me, his mouth dropped open. Do you like it? I asked, turning for him. Alexander stuttered as he tried to answer. I laughed and took his arm. I'll take that as a yes. There was a brief silence as we walked into the restaurant. I felt all eyes on me for a moment before the applause started. Sarah came up to hug me. Nice dress, she said, then glanced at Alexander and back at me with a small wink. The night became a blur of congratulations and emotional farewells as everyone drank more. Richard, slightly tipsy, kept talking about what a wonderful company we had. It became so uncomfortable that Billy called out loudly, You're right, Clara girl, he does go on. The room burst into laughter, and Richard sulked in his seat. While waiting for the ladies' room, Monica grabbed my arm. Nice dress, she grinned. If you've got it, flaunt it. Who's the dishy one you're with? A friend, I said, flushing. Liar, she replied cheerfully. I found Alexander sitting with Mark and Charlotte. The queue was a mile long. Sorry, I said. Alexander immediately stood, as did Mark after Charlotte jabbed him in the ribs. I just rescued Alexander from Sir Humphrey, Charlotte explained as I sat down. Humpy? He's a nice guy. What happened? Alexander smiled wryly. He gave me quite a lecture. Told me he could still wield a formidable horsewhip if I broke your heart. Oh my, I murmured, blushing. Sorry, Alexander. Not at all, he replied, smiling. I completely understand his feelings. You saw the final performance, Alexander? Mark asked. Yes, Clara was superb, as usual, Alexander said. Charlotte smiled at me. We have to go. Mark's flying out. I'll call you tomorrow to finalize plans for our holiday. They kissed my cheek, Mark winked, and they left. We sat quietly, talking between the interruptions from cast and crew members offering their goodbyes. After I hugged Simon, Humpy, and Sarah for the last time, I found myself crying and turned to Alexander. Do you mind terribly if we go? He stood immediately. Not at all, he said, taking my hand and leading me through the thinning crowd. Henri caught me for one last hug, and with a final wave, Alexander and I were outside. I was wiping my eyes when Alexander said, I think I should take you home. I hope you don't mind, but you look exhausted. I am, I stifled a yawn. I'll take a taxi. I'm afraid I'm not much company. Everything's caught up with me. I'm afraid I insist on escorting you, he said with that crooked smile. You should know me by now. My car's parked a few blocks away. Do you mind walking there? No, it's nice to be away from all of that. He removed his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It's chilly, he said simply. Hand in hand, we walked slowly down the street, oblivious to the looks from pedestrians. Thank you for coming with me, I said softly, then, without thinking, rested my head on his shoulder as we walked. The warning voice in my head told me he was just a friend, but I ignored it. It could have been the champagne, the exhaustion, or something else, but I just let it go. He smiled that crooked smile. It was a terrible and onerous duty, but I persevered. I enjoyed every moment. Even Sir Humphrey? Even Sir Humphrey. Alexander opened the car door, and I gratefully slipped inside, kicking off my shoes and curling up to rest against the door. I watched him in the dim car lights as we drove toward Notting Hill. We soon arrived, and he helped me out of the car. Good night, Clara, he said at the door. Can I offer you a cup of tea? I asked before I even realized what I was saying. What am I doing? I thought to myself, but he nodded and followed me inside. I dropped my shoes beside the door. Belinda and Rodney weren't home, so we had the place to ourselves. Yawning, I began to prepare the tea. It won't take long to boil, I said, lowering myself onto the sofa. Alexander stood at the kitchen counter, smiling. Let me make it, he said. If you insist, I murmured, and that was the last thing I remembered. Clara! I groggily woke up to find Belinda and Rodney standing above me. I was on the sofa, covered by a blanket, still in my dress. What happened? Great, I groaned. I must have fallen asleep. Look at this, Rodney said, pointing to a sheet of paper on the kitchen bench next to the 2 cups and teapot. God, he even made the tea! I exclaimed, getting up and walking over to the bench to read the note. Clara. I found the blanket in the cupboard, hope it's okay, and I let myself out. Enjoy your holiday, and I'll see you at the photo shoot. S.E. P.S. You look like an angel when you're asleep. Belle read over my shoulder. I shot her a glare, then turned to Rodney. Don't say a word, I warned, stalking off to my bedroom. The hotel was beautiful, and Charlotte had reserved a suite with 2 bedrooms, one with a queen-sized bed and the other with 2 smaller ones. Belinda and I will take the singles, Charlotte said after the porters had left our luggage. Are you sure? I don't mind, I offered. We know, we just want you to get plenty of sleep, Charlotte replied. Belinda and Charlotte had avoided talking about Alexander the entire time, and I could tell they were worried about me. God, I said, standing at the window, the water in the pool looks so blue. Let's get some swimsuits and head down there, then, Charlotte said. There are shops right next to the hotel. I hesitated. You go ahead, I'll. Come on, you'll look great in a swimsuit. You have the body for it. Let's just take a look, Charlotte urged. 2.5 hours later, we returned, and I was now the proud owner of a black bikini and a bronze one-piece with high-cut legs. The girls assured me I looked fine, but I thought I looked dreadful in the dressing room mirror. I also picked up a sarong to wrap around my waist, worried about any bumps, but Helen had assured me that the special underwear would take care of that. The bikini had full pants, though I did glance at the ones with tied sides longingly. I'm so pale, Belinda groaned when she modeled her blue bikini. Charlotte had chosen a metallic one-piece, and after she modeled it, they both looked at me expectantly. Oh, all right, I grumbled and headed off to change into the one-piece. When I returned, I looked down and noticed the front was flat, and I sighed with relief. There, I looked terrible. They gaped at me, and Belle grinned. Yes, extremely ugly, she teased, leading me to the mirror. I stared at my reflection. In the change room, it looked awful. But this, well, it's not too bad. Charlotte picked up the phone. Who are you calling? Reception, I said with a smirk. I'm going to ask them to send up a couple of cricket bats to keep the thousands of excited young men away. I threw my sarong at her and grinned. For the next 2 days, we did nothing but lounge by the pool, swim, sip cocktails, nap, and eat out. It was glorious. And Charlotte was right, guys definitely noticed us, but we had made a pact to stick to a girls' holiday. Still, we could look. They stared at us, and although Belle and Charlotte teasingly told me that most of the guys had their tongues hanging out for me, I didn't believe it at first. But when they approached us, they stared at me even while talking to Belle or Charlotte. On the 3rd day, I wore the bikini and felt eyes on me as I walked slowly to our lounges by the pool. How many did you count, Charlotte? Belle whispered as we set up our stuff. 7. I saw 8, you missed the guy by the bar. What are you talking about? I asked crossly. Excitements, Charlotte said casually, winking at me. I gasped in shock, and both of them burst into laughter as they walked down the steps into the pool. Saucy bitches, I muttered to myself as I lay on my stomach, still wondering if they were right. Did I really? No, I didn't want to think about that. I smiled to myself behind my sunglasses. That evening, while we were at the restaurant, Belle said, Clara, we've been tiptoeing around Alexander, but it's time to spill. What happened? We've been dying to know, Charlotte added. I took a sip of my water. I fell asleep, I said. He found a blanket, covered me, and left. That's all. A perfect gentleman, Charlotte sighed dreamily. They don't come around often. What were you so mad about, then? Belle asked. I thought you two were just friends. I don't know, I said, buttering my toast furiously. I was embarrassed and, well, I thought. You thought he'd kiss you goodnight? I blushed. I don't know, well, it was a terrible way to end the night. I didn't get a chance to say goodnight, you know. Awful? Sounds positively romantic to me, Belle teased. Clara, you were mentally and physically exhausted. I think Alexander was smart enough to see that. I know, I sighed. But you wanted the night to end differently? Maybe, yes, oh, I don't know. Is that wrong of me? I thought there'd be a goodnight kiss, I admitted, blushing. How do you know there wasn't? Charlotte said slyly. Oh, great. I grumbled. He kisses me while I'm asleep. Perfect. They laughed, and after pretending to be cross for a minute, I joined in. Is it really time to go back? I complained. We're on a flight tomorrow afternoon, so let's have a great night tonight, Belle said, just as Charlotte's phone rang. She never turns it off, I muttered. And that's why she's the best agent, Belle reminded me. You're right, Belle. As usual, I said, sticking my tongue out at her. She laughed. That was Frank Bertram, Charlotte said excitedly, Sir Humphrey Barton's agent. Sir Humphrey is directing a short season of a certain Shakespeare play, whose name we can't mention because you actors are so superstitious. Is he? I asked, intrigued. How long's the season? 6 days, and he's not just directing but starring as the lead. How wonderful! We must see it, I know he'll be brilliant. Charlotte grinned. He wants you as the female lead. I see, she said thoughtfully before continuing, Clara, I expect you to live as you are for at least 12 months before we consider any steps toward reassignment. The look on my face made her pause. No, I hadn't even thought about that yet, Helen. It's a step I'm not sure about. She nodded. So what's bothering you? I sighed, then explained the situation with Alexander. Are you attracted to him, Clara? She asked gently. No, I mean, yes. I don't know, I muttered, burying my face in my hands, feeling like I might cry. Understanding relationships can be difficult, she said softly. Don't take this the wrong way, but before you were Clara, I understand you weren't particularly good at relationships? I shook my head. But I'm improving, I think, I replied quietly. Do you talk to your friends about relationships? She asked. I nodded. That's one advantage of being a woman, isn't it? She smiled warmly. I know this is all difficult for you to process, but you have to accept that. She smiled and took my hand. Clara, you're confused, and that's perfectly normal. I'd like you to see a psychiatrist and later a psychologist. I know it's hard, but these sessions may help you clear up some confusion. Don't worry, they will be completely confidential. I sighed again. Okay, I agreed, my voice barely audible. The final performance day had arrived, and despite feeling mentally exhausted, I dragged myself out of bed for a morning coffee with Charlotte and Belinda. Mark was off on another tour, something he loved, but he promised to return for the final show. After tonight, it's all over, I murmured, stirring my coffee. Not quite, Charlotte replied, don't forget about the Sasha Cosmetics photo session. She hasn't forgotten, Belinda teased, grinning as Charlotte had already interrogated me about the date and knew all the details. Oh, leave it out, I grumbled. I'm so tired. Poor dear, Belinda said sympathetically. Shall we tell her? I glanced up. Tell me what? Charlotte grinned. I've arranged a little getaway for you, 5 days in the sun. I perked up. Where? Spain. Spain! That's fantastic. I squealed, and then added, I'm not going alone, am I? You two are coming? Charlotte waved 3 tickets in front of me, and I shrieked with excitement. When do we leave? The day after tomorrow. But what about clothes? What will I wear? Dear, Charlotte said with a grin, we're going to Spain, we shop in Spain, okay? Yes. Belle grinned. We can get swimsuits at the resort. Swimsuits? I murmured, unsure. Can't wait to see you in a bikini, Belle teased. House lights dimmed, the spotlight fell on Simone. Simone, this is who I am, this is me. Fade to black, curtain down. As I delivered the final lines, a wave of relief, sadness, and exhaustion washed over me. I was so drained that I didn't even notice when the others joined me for the encore. When the curtain rose again, the applause was deafening. We bowed, and the audience stood, giving us a standing ovation. The noise intensified as Henri came forward with another bouquet of roses, kissing me on the cheek as he presented them. The company gathered around, Humpy kissed my hand, sending the crowd into another frenzy, and then Simon winked at the audience. I stepped back off the stage, but the audience erupted, chanting my name in unison. Humpy hugged me tightly and said, "Your fans await, milady." "Oh Humpy, I'm so tired," I whispered. "I know," he said gently. "But one last performance? Remember what a certain actor once said, that we should thank the audience because, without them, we have no purpose." He was right, and I smiled, blinking back tears. "Thanks, Humpy. How do I look?" "Ravishing, as always." The audience's cheers grew louder as I returned to the stage, holding the bouquet and smiling through my tears. The lights dimmed again, and I began to speak. "What would they think of this in Liverpool?" I said in my Liverpudlian accent, causing the audience to laugh. I waited for the laughter to die down before switching back to my normal accent. "I wish Sarah had written something for me," I said. "She has a way with words, and I don't. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you to all the audiences everywhere who come and give us, the actors, a reason to do this night after night." The house lights brightened slightly, allowing me to see the audience's faces, and I silently thanked Billy for knowing exactly what I needed. "I would also like to thank Sarah for writing this play," I said, receiving small applause. "I'd also like to thank Sir Humphrey Barton for teaching me so much." More applause, and I saw Humpy smiling from the wings. "And I'd like to thank Simon Thompson for presenting the role of Tom so perfectly and for being so kind. It's extremely difficult working with two such dishy men," I said with a wink, causing the audience to burst into delighted laughter. I went on to thank everyone, and just as I was thanking the crew, members of the backstage team walked out with a massive bouquet of yellow roses. I was stunned, and Billy winked, gesturing to me. "She's a cracker, ain't she?" he said, prompting another round of wild applause. Thankfully, I was allowed to exit the stage. Belle was dressed and eager to party, with Rodney pacing the corridor in his dinner suit. "You go ahead, Belle," I said. "I'll meet you there." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Charlotte and Mark have gone ahead. I can stay if you want." "Don't be silly," I replied. "I'll do a quick change and be there before you know it." She smiled and left. I stripped off the costume and dressed in a robe over my slip and underwear, cleaning my face before a soft tap at the door caught my attention. I guessed it was either Simon or Humpy. "Come in," I called, continuing to make up my face for the party. "I'm not disturbing you, am I?" I turned in surprise to see Alexander standing in the doorway. Some men look uncomfortable in a dinner suit, but others, like Alexander, make it look like they were born in it. And it made him even more handsome. "Alexander!" I exclaimed with a smile, quickly recovering from my surprise. "No, you're not disturbing me at all. I'm glad you're here." He straightened up and glanced around the room, clearly feeling a bit out of place amid the dresses and makeup clutter. "I just had to congratulate you, Clara," he said, beaming. "You were extraordinary." "Really? You were there?" I asked, a little surprised, as I nervously ran my fingers through my hair. "Did your mother enjoy it? Or did you bring someone else?" I cursed myself inwardly for sounding so obvious. Alexander, however, didn't seem to notice my awkwardness. "No, I came alone. I had to bribe a friend quite a bit to get a ticket, but it was worth it. Congratulations again." He smiled again and turned toward the door. "I'll leave you to your party. See you at the photo shoot?" I quickly blocked his exit. "Not so fast, lad," I teased, slipping back into my Liverpool accent before switching to my normal voice. "I'd love you to join me, if you're allowed." A grin spread across Alexander's face before it faltered. "I wouldn't want to intrude." "You won't," I assured him. "I want you to come. I need to get dressed anyway." I'll wait outside, he said, hastily leaving the room. Alexander's mouth dropped open when he saw me. I turned, giving him a quick spin. Do you like it? I asked. He tried to speak but stammered. Laughing, I took his arm. I'll take that as a yes. When we entered the restaurant, there was a brief silence before the room erupted in applause. Sarah came over and gave me a hug. Nice dress, she said approvingly, then glanced at Alexander before winking at me. The evening flew by, filled with congratulations and emotional farewells. Richard, a bit tipsy, rambled on about what a great company we had, making everyone uncomfortable until Billy shouted, "You're right, Clara girl," he does go on. Laughter erupted, and Richard sulked into his seat. Monica grabbed my arm as I waited in line for the ladies' room. Nice dress, she grinned. If you've got it, flaunt it. Who's the dishy guy you're with? A friend, I blushed, trying to be coy. Liar, Monica teased. I found Alexander seated with Mark and Charlotte. The queue was ridiculously long. Sorry. Alexander stood up immediately as Mark nudged him. I just rescued Alexander from Sir Humphrey, Charlotte explained as I sat down. Humpy? He's a gem. What happened? Alexander smiled wryly. He gave me quite the lecture. Told me he could still wield a horsewhip if I broke your heart. Oh my, I murmured, my face turning red. I'm so sorry, Alexander. Not at all, he smiled. I completely understand his feelings. Mark asked, You saw the final performance, Alexander? Yes, Clara was superb, as always. Charlotte shot me a look and smiled. We need to head out. Mark's flying out. I'll call you tomorrow about the holiday plans. They kissed my cheek, Mark winked, and they left. We talked quietly for a while, though our conversation was constantly interrupted by cast members and crew saying their goodbyes. After I hugged Simon, Humpy, and Sarah one last time, I was in tears. Do you mind terribly if we leave now? I asked Alexander. He stood up immediately, taking my hand. Not at all, he said. Together, we made our way through the thinning crowd. Henri hugged me tightly as I left, and with one final wave, Alexander and I stepped into the street. I tried to wipe my eyes when Alexander said, I think I should take you home. You look exhausted. I am, I admitted, stifling a yawn. I'll take a taxi, I'm not great company right now. Everything's caught up with me. I'm afraid I'm insisting on escorting you, he said with that crooked smile. My car's parked a few blocks away. Shall we walk to it? No problem, it's nice to get away from all of this. He shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. It's chilly, he said, and hand in hand, we strolled down the street, oblivious to the curious glances from pedestrians. Thanks for coming with me, I said softly, then, almost instinctively, I rested my head on his shoulder. A voice in my head reminded me he was just a friend, but I ignored it, not sure if it was the champagne or exhaustion clouding my judgment. Alexander smiled that crooked smile of his. It was a terrible duty, but I persevered. I enjoyed every moment. Even Sir Humphrey? I teased. Even Sir Humphrey. He opened the car door, and I slipped inside, kicking off my shoes and curling my legs up. As we drove through the city, I found myself watching the flickering lights of the city and the dim glow of the car's instrument panel. Before I knew it, we were home. He helped me out of the car. Good night, Clara, he said at the door. Can I offer you a cup of tea? I asked, surprised at my own words. What was I doing? He nodded, following me inside. I dropped my shoes by the door and saw that Belle and Rodney weren't there, leaving the place to us. I started making tea, muttering to myself about the strange turn of events. Alexander stood at the kitchen bench, smiling. Let me make it, he said. If you insist, I murmured, and that was the last thing I remembered. Clara! I woke up groggily to see Belle and Rodney looking down at me. I was on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, still in my dress. What happened? I asked, feeling disoriented. Great, I groaned. I must have fallen asleep. Rodney pointed to a sheet of paper on the kitchen bench. Look at this. I don't think so. No, really, nothing to tell. We went out for supper and, well, what? I fell asleep, I admitted softly. Holly burst into laughter and I quickly shared the details of the night. I'm sure he's coming back for more, Clara, she said. What about you and Alexander? I asked with a sly grin. We're just friends, she replied, changing the film with such quickness that the camera clicked again. Just friends? I don't think so, I teased, pouting. The camera clicked once more. Holly chuckled. It's true, we really are. But, she added with a mischievous smile, I should tell you I'm gay. Oh. So if Steve doesn't come running, just pick up the phone, she winked. I couldn't help but laugh. All finished, Holly said, looking at me with a smile. I blinked in surprise. What? That's it, she said, helping me off the stool. You were great. She pressed a button near the door. That'll bring them running. As if on cue, the door opened, and Byron and Alexander appeared with Julie. All finished, Steve, Holly said. Excellent, Alexander smiled at me. We have light refreshments upstairs in the boardroom. I hope you'll join us, Clara? Of course, I murmured. I'll organize the proofs and have them brought up, Holly said. I cleaned my face and reapplied my makeup, deciding to leave my hair as Julie had styled it. I heard Miss Victor raving about you, love, Julie said, as I applied lipstick. She was telling Mr. Goodwood and Mr. Edwards all about you. Told you it'd be easy. We settled into some sleek white leather sofas around a glass coffee table. It was all modern, sleek, and quite uncomfortable. Alexander sat across from me, Byron to my left, and Holly beside me. The proofs are being printed from the digital files, so we'll have a preview, Holly explained. The final shots will be much better, though, so keep that in mind. The proofs were projected onto a screen, and there were about 5 different shots of me in various expressions, laughing, serious, pouting, smiling, and so on. They're great, Byron said, nodding approvingly. Holly shrugged. The camera loves her. I think you should use a series of individual shots like this in one ad. I agree, Alexander said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. What tagline? Byron asked. Alexander looked at me and smiled. Miss Catherine Grant, British actress. At home on the stage and at home with Sasha Cosmetics. I love it, Byron grinned. Do you, Clara? Alexander asked. It sounds perfect to me, I said. Now, I really don't like looking at myself, so could we turn that off? They laughed, and the screen went dark. I said my goodbyes to Byron and Holly as they left, leaving Alexander and me alone with a broad wink from Holly. Well, I said slowly, standing up, I should go. Of course, I'm sure you have a busy schedule, Alexander said. I stood uncertainly by the door. Alexander, I began, I'm terribly sorry about the other night, I feel so embarrassed. Nonsense, he said quickly. It was completely understandable after such a grueling performance. I'm actually quite pleased you felt relaxed enough to fall asleep. Thank you for covering for me, I murmured. Not at all. Did you drink the tea? It was rather cold by the time I woke up, I replied. Alexander chuckled. You were deep asleep. I took his hand and kissed his cheek. Thank you, Alexander. Just then, a noise from outside the door interrupted us, and Alexander straightened up. I'll escort you to the exit, he said with a formal tone, though I could detect a slight catch in his voice. Goodbye, Clara, he added as we stood in the doorway, people hurrying past us. The doorman held the taxi door open, and as I began to step inside, Alexander called softly, "You did look like an angel, Clara." The door closed, and the taxi sped off. I pressed my hand to my burning cheek, feeling my heart pound. "Oh my," I whispered to myself. "Oh my, indeed." What was happening to me, I wondered. What on earth was I doing? Miss Catherine Grant. Sir Humphrey smiled broadly as he announced my name. The other members of the cast applauded politely, some giving me that familiar, condescending look, as though I was a contemporary actor not worthy of their respect. Humpy, however, was kind enough to embrace me and hold me at arm's length. "Let me look at you. Stunning as always." "Thanks, Humpy." I nodded at the others who were out of earshot. "They seem a little cool." "It's always like that at the beginning," he said. "Either that or false friendliness. It's the way of the theater, I'm afraid." "Shall we begin?" The rehearsals went smoothly, and by the end of the 2 weeks, some of the other actors were starting to warm up to me, offering me a few compliments. I was always polite, but not overly familiar. Humpy was directing the play for Henry's company, and Henri was delighted when he saw me. "We sold out the entire 6 days in just 1.5 hours, he told me excitedly. "A lot of it has to do with you and Humpy together," he added with a broad grin. "Shush," I said, giving him a wink. "Don't say that too loud. The others might not like it." Jealousy is always part of theater, I'm afraid. "Can you believe we sold out so quickly?" "I'm just glad we got a theater." Humpy had decided to set the play in an ambiguous time period, with all the actors wearing military clothes instead of traditional kilts and tartans. The costumes had come from another production that had been cancelled, and Henri had gotten them cheaply. There was a distinct influence of fascist Italy from the Second World War, which meant my costumes were styled from the 1930s. "I'll trim your hair a little," Belinda said, "and style it like Lauren Bacall's." The excitement was palpable on opening night. Humpy had banned any open rehearsals, so no one outside the theater had an inkling of what to expect. I felt like I gave a stronger performance than in Silken Memories, mainly because this role allowed me to measure my work against other actors. Humpy was brilliant, fully exploring Macbeth's tortured character, and when the curtain fell, the audience erupted into a standing ovation. This time, I had a much larger dressing room, which Belle noticed with satisfaction. I had just changed and was brushing my hair when there was a knock at the door. Rodney burst in, saying to Belle, "You ready, darling?" He suddenly froze upon seeing me and quickly apologized. "Sorry, I didn't know." "It's perfectly fine, Rodney," I reassured him, and Belle moved toward the door. "I'll see you at the party," she said, slipping out before I could tease her. The reviews were outstanding, and the rest of the cast treated me with much more respect. One of them even mentioned seeing my picture at a tube station, which I guessed meant the Sasha posters had finally gone up. I smiled through the night, mostly chatting with Charlotte, who told me she had agreed to an interview with Michael Patterson after the short season ended. Michael Patterson? He's famous. Do I really have to do it? Yes, you do, Charlotte replied firmly. I've been getting loads of requests, so I chose the one with the most prestige. I don't want to overwhelm the media with you, just a bit here and there to keep the interest up. By the way, have you seen your billboard? I shook my head. I hadn't seen the posters. It's huge and really good. Sasha's very pleased with the response. Are they? I asked, interested. Who did you speak to? Byron. They're even considering asking you to do television commercials. I told him to send over the proposal so we can look it over. Oh, I said, immediately losing interest. Finally, I escaped the party and took a taxi home, feeling lost and sad, wondering why Alexander hadn't shown up for the opening night. Eventually, I convinced myself that Alexander and I were just friends. But what else could we be? What else? I asked myself bitterly. The flat was dark, and I made it to my bedroom before I broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the hopelessness of my situation and mourning what might have been. The season had been a success, and both Humpy and Henri were thrilled. The final night was a huge hit, with an enthusiastic audience who went wild when Humpy and I accepted the standing ovation hand in hand. Once again, I found myself searching for Alexander, but he wasn't there. I was accepting congratulations from the guests at the party, after a lengthy conversation with Laura Wood, who wanted to arrange an in-depth interview. Of course, I was terrified of the idea, but I managed to smile and suggest she talk to Charlotte instead. I was about to make my exit when I suddenly found myself face to face with a smiling Mrs. Edwards. "Congratulations, Clara. You were superb." "Thank you, Mary," I said evenly, looking around for any sign of Alexander. She noticed my gaze and laughed. "I'm unaccompanied tonight. Alexander was called away to America for something big at head office." "Is he okay?" I asked, a tinge of worry in my voice. "Perfectly," she smiled, slipping her arm through mine and leading me to a quiet corner. "He's quite taken with you, my dear, but unfortunately, Alexander is shy and slow to act." "He's very sweet," I murmured, blushing. "I mean..." Mary laughed knowingly. "I understand, but I might have to speed things along a little." "Would you mind?" "What do you mean?" "I'm thinking of inviting you to my country home for the weekend. There'll be other guests, and of course, Alexander will be there." "That sounds lovely," I said softly. The next day, the play was filmed for television, which was an eye-opening experience for me. I already knew the difference between performing in a theater and being more subdued for film, but the adrenaline was pumping, and I was looking forward to it. The process was long, and I learned a lot, but I did grow tired of waiting and redoing scenes. We were seated at Charlotte's Chelsea townhouse, relaxing after the hectic schedule, when Belle suddenly announced, "Rodney and I are getting engaged." We both jumped up, hugging her and showering her with congratulations. I could tell Belle was ecstatic. "You two are perfect together," I said, after the excitement settled. "When are you getting married?" Charlotte asked, and Belle shrugged. "Not sure, not for a while. I need to get my business up and running first." "Are you moving in with Rodney, or is he moving in with you?" I asked. Belle hesitated. "We thought he'd move in with us." "That's fantastic," I said cheerfully. "It won't make any difference for you, Clara. You'll still have your room." "I know," I smiled, "but you two lovebirds need your space." I started looking around. "You can stay here if you like," Charlotte offered. "I've got a spare bedroom with its own bathroom. It's yours until you find something." "Thanks, Charlotte, I might just take you up on that." I did, and Belle was teary-eyed when she hugged me goodbye. "I'm going to miss you, but we'll see each other all the time." "Yes," she said, trying to smile through her tears. I hesitated before asking, "Does Rodney know about me?" "Of course not, Clara. I would never tell him." I waved goodbye from the taxi and moved into Charlotte's flat. I had also been seeing the two doctors Helen had recommended, attending regular sessions that were both difficult and rewarding. My life was slowly starting to make more sense. "Don't forget, you're on the Michael Patterson show tomorrow night," Charlotte reminded me once again. "How could I forget? You remind me every half hour." Charlotte ignored me and slipped a disc into the TV. "He interviewed Sir Humphrey right before the play opened. You should watch it so you'll know what was said." I settled back on the sofa, still nervous about meeting him. Michael Patterson had been on television for ages, known for his insightful and charming interviews. I didn't tell Charlotte, but I was terrified that he would see right through me. My next guest is, without a doubt, one of the greatest Shakespearean actors of our time, and he's both directing and starring in Macbeth. Please welcome, Sir Humphrey Barton. They discussed the past for a while, before Michael praised Humpy's performance in Silken Memories. "I must say, Sir Humphrey, your performance in Silken Memories was one of your finest in contemporary theatre. Would you agree?" "I'm very proud of it," Humpy replied. "It was an exhilarating experience. I found new depth to the role by working with the incredible Catherine Grant. I have to agree, she was amazing." "And you've cast her as Lady Macbeth?" "Of course, she's extraordinary, and I have no doubt her performance will be excellent." "Does the age difference between you two present an issue in this role?" "No, I think it adds a layer of complexity to the production. Many an older man has been beguiled and swayed by a younger woman." He winked at the camera, and the studio audience chuckled. "Humpy's very good," I said to Charlotte. "But I'm not sure if I can be as smooth." "Of course you will, it's just acting, isn't it?" "I suppose so," I said, my nerves starting to show. But I decided to call Humpy the next day for some advice. "Hello, Humpy, it's Clara." "Clara, darling," he boomed on the phone. "How the hell are you?" We chatted for half an hour, and he gave me the same advice as Charlotte. "It's just another performance, Clara. Remember, you're performing for the audience you can't see, not for Michael." "Thanks, Humpy. You're a doll, and I'm just an old worrywart." "I'm sorry, Clara, I can't imagine you with a wart." I laughed and hung up, feeling slightly better. Belle and I chose a simple black dress, paired with a matching necklace, earrings, bracelets, heels, and black stockings. The dress had long sleeves but a scalloped neckline that displayed a hint of cleavage. "Do you think this is too much?" I asked, tugging at the dress. "No," Belle said gently. "You look fantastic. Let me do your hair." There was a knock at the door, and Michael Patterson stepped in. He looked a bit stunned at first but quickly recovered. "Miss Grant, Michael Patterson, I thought I'd take a moment to introduce myself." I extended my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." He smiled as he shook my hand. "You're a tough one to get on the show, and I have to tell you, Charlotte Richards is quite formidable." "Yes," I smiled. "She is." "Right, then. You're the first guest, and you'll stay for the second guest, so you'll be on the show for the entire time, okay?" I nodded. "See you soon." I stood nervously on the set, waiting to walk down the stairs when Michael introduced me. "You'll be fine," Charlotte whispered before darting away to watch from the booth. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement as the theme music played, and I heard Michael being counted in. "Good evening and welcome," Michael began. "Tonight, we'll be exploring two aspects of entertainment. My second guest is the acclaimed French film director Luc Benoit, who will discuss his new film Lost River. However, my first guest is a rising star in British theatre. She gained widespread acclaim for her role as Simone in Silken Memories, and once again impressed audiences as Lady Macbeth in Sir Humphrey Barton's recent production. She's known for her beauty as much as her talent, and I'm sure you've seen the posters and billboards. I saw her in both theater productions and was captivated by her beauty, but, ladies and gentlemen, when I popped backstage to introduce myself, I must admit, her beauty is even more striking up close. Please welcome, Miss Catherine Grant." "Okay, here we go," I thought, "smile and don't trip down the stairs." The applause was thunderous. I smiled as I greeted Michael, who stood as I sat down, arranging my dress beneath me. "Welcome, Catherine," he said as he sat, a clipboard resting on his knee. "Thank you, Michael," I smiled, then turned to the camera, winked, and said in my Liverpool accent, "He's even more dishy up close." The audience laughed, and I could have sworn Michael blushed beneath his makeup. "I suspected that," he said with his familiar wry grin. "So, you come from Liverpool?" "I was born in Dublin, but we moved to Liverpool when I was 5. "Why the theatre?" "Why not? I live for it, I love it. And you're extraordinary at it, I must say." "Was it different, stepping into Shakespeare?" "Oh yes, completely. I was extremely nervous and worried all the time. I was taken aback. The role of Lady Macbeth was a prestigious one, and it's often a highly competitive role, always measured against the great performances of the past. What? I asked, not quite able to believe it. Clara, it's an amazing opportunity, Charlotte continued, her voice filled with excitement. Everyone knows you'll be fantastic in it, and the buzz around it is huge. People want to see you two back together on stage. Frank believes the entire 6-day run will sell out within a day. There's even talk about filming it for television. When? I asked, still processing the news. Rehearsals start in 2 weeks. And Clara, they want to pay you handsomely. What do you think? Think? I repeated, still somewhat stunned. Can you give me more than a one-word answer, Clara? Belinda laughed. I don't know, it's such an honor that Humpy asked me, but I haven't. I hesitated, overwhelmed by the possibilities. After a brief moment of silence, I laughed. What am I agonizing over? Yes, I want to do it. Tell them yes. We all shrieked with excitement and hugged, and Charlotte quickly broke free to call Humpy's agent. I was going to be Lady Macbeth. As soon as we returned, Charlotte arranged for the photo shoot with Byron Goodwood for 2 days later. It's all your real hair now, no extensions, Beth remarked as she finished brushing my hair. It's beautiful, Clara. I smiled, feeling proud of my thick, shiny hair. Will you be doing my hair and makeup for the shoot? Belinda shook her head. No, Sasha Cosmetics is handling that. It's their products, after all. She paused, looking at me with a serious expression. Clara, can I talk to you about something? Of course. What's on your mind? You remember when I told you about the issues I had with Richard when I started my own company? She asked. I nodded, and she continued, well, I've been talking to Charlotte, and she thinks I should try again, start my own company and hire stylists to work with clients. Charlotte mentioned Simon needs one. That's amazing, I said, hugging her. But you'll still be my stylist, right? Of course, Belinda grinned. But the bank will only lend me money if I have a client list, so. I understood immediately and smiled. You're right, we don't have a contract, do we? You could run off to someone else. Belinda's eyes widened in surprise. Clara, I would never. Then she caught on and smiled. You had me going there. Seriously, you don't mind? Of course not. If a contract helps you, let's do it. I think it's amazing, and I'm so proud of you. Belinda kissed me on the cheek. Thank you, Clara. Is Rodney joining Belinda Morrison and Company? I asked playfully. She blushed. He might. I hear wedding bells. Don't be silly. The photo shoot at the Knightsbridge studio made me nervous, especially since I had no idea what to expect. On top of that, I was anxious about possibly running into Alexander. Miss Grant, Byron Goodwood greeted me, it's a pleasure. He was young, balding, and appeared to be looking at my chest instead of my face. This is Julie, who will do your hair and makeup. There's only one costume, but I'll explain that shortly. The mention of a costume change made me nervous. Julie, who had a South London accent, gave me a warm smile as Byron left. He thinks he's a big deal, she said with a wink. Don't worry, love, you'll be fine. I liked her immediately. Will I do? I asked cheekily. You'll do, she responded with a smile. You're an actress? Yes, it's my first real photo shoot, and I'm a bit nervous about it all. A liver lass, eh? Yes, from Merseyside. Don't worry, you'll be great. The shoot will be quick. Though, I've never worked with the photographer. He's American, flown in just for you. Me? I laughed nervously. Now I'm even more nervous. Julie finished my hair just as Byron came in. All done, Mr. Goodwood, she said with a quick wink. Byron introduced me to Holly Victor, the photographer. She was an American with short blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that scanned me carefully. Great-looking model, she said to Byron, completely ignoring me at first. Which agency did you get her through? I interrupted, I'm right here, Ms. Victor. Maybe you could direct your questions to me? Holly, startled, grinned and extended her hand. Guess I blew it, huh? Let's start over. Hi there, nice to meet you, I'm Holly Victor. Nice to meet you, I replied, offering a smile. Clara Grant. She led me through the studio, and we chatted as we walked. I've been here for 3 days and still love the accents. You're sure beautiful. I can see why they chose you. I think I've learned you're not a model? No, I laughed, I'm an actor. Movies? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Yes, that's what I do, I answered, feeling a bit nervous again. I wondered if she was sensing something off about me or the situation. Let's get started, Holly said as we entered the studio. Just be yourself, relax. I'm not looking for fake poses. I don't think you should go back on stage so quickly, Charlotte said. You need a change, something different. Yes, I think you're right, I agreed, nodding. I've gone through the scripts you've received, she continued. And? Most of the movie scripts are pretty awful, for various reasons, but there's one. She slid a script across the table toward me. This one's from Luc Benoit. I looked up in surprise. Really? Yes. He called me and said he was looking for someone to play the lead in his new film. After seeing you on the Patterson show, he was sold. I've read it, and it's good. It's in French, and I hear you speak French fluently? Charlotte raised an eyebrow. At least that's one benefit of a botched education and a good ear for languages and accents, I replied. What's it about? It's about a young man who falls in love with a beautiful woman, but she's unaware of him. He follows her around, almost stalks her, until they finally meet. She's in love with someone else. It's a bittersweet story, very French, but, Charlotte said with a grin, no nude scenes and no kissing. I skimmed through the script and agreed it sounded interesting. Charlotte made the arrangements for me to shoot in Paris. Luc needed me for only 2 weeks, and I was thrilled to spend time in Paris where no one knew me. Belle, Charlotte, and I went to Paris, and the filming was enjoyable. Luc, being a sensitive director, helped me deliver a performance I don't think I could have done without his guidance. The film was a romantic comedy, titled The Englishwoman, and I loved every minute of making it. Paris, however, was a different love affair entirely. I want to live here, I said one evening after we finished shooting. Why not? Charlotte shrugged. You love it here. Are you sure? Belle asked. It's close to England, and no one knows me here. You'll make enough from this film for a down payment on a good apartment, Charlotte offered. Should I look around for you? You? I raised an eyebrow. How well do you know Paris? Charlotte blushed. Not very well, but Luc does. Oh, I see. Are you getting serious about Luc? I teased. I don't know, but he's unlike anyone I've ever met. I smiled. I hope everything works out. After returning to London, I let myself into Charlotte's townhouse. Belle went to see Rodney, and I envied her. Charlotte decided to stay another week to look for an apartment and take care of business. I suspected the business deals were more personal than professional, and I hoped things worked out with her and Luc. They seemed so well suited. The next day, I wandered around the townhouse, thinking about calling Belle but deciding against it. After 2 weeks apart, they were probably still catching up. The phone rang, and I picked it up eagerly, hoping it was Alexander, but it was Mark. Hello, darling, he said. Got time for me? Of course, I smiled. Let's have lunch and fun. We met at a restaurant, and Mark stood when I approached. Eyes followed me, but I ignored them. Wow, Mark said, looking me up and down. You look great. Thanks, I murmured. Mark was a breath of fresh air, and I laughed at his European stories. Don't look now, he whispered, but we've got paparazzi around. I smiled and took his hand. Let's give them something to shoot. He grinned, and we both laughed. After lunch, as I kissed his cheek outside the restaurant, he grinned. Another one for the tabloids, huh? I walked through the shops afterward, feeling more at ease now that I had decided not to care about the stares. A young man approached and asked for my autograph. Me? I'm no one important. I said. I've seen you in your plays. I loved Silken Memories, saw it 3 times. Your Lady Macbeth was amazing. Please, Miss Grant. I signed it with a smile, and the next day, gossip magazines featured grainy pictures of Mark and me holding hands and kissing, with the headline, Clara's Secret Rendezvous. The phone rang, and I was sure it was Mark calling to laugh about the magazine photos, but it was Alexander's deep voice that echoed down the line. Hello, Clara? Alexander? My heart skipped. I hope I'm not disturbing you, he said, his tone formal as always. No, not at all, I said, trying to sound calm, though my heart was pounding. Where had he been, and why did it matter to me? I'm sorry I didn't call sooner, but I've been in New York for a while. When I returned, I found you were in Paris. It's okay, I said, keeping my voice even. I understand how busy you must be. It has been hectic, he said. I've been promoted and now have responsibility for all of Europe. I had hoped to catch your Lady Macbeth, but my flight was cancelled last minute. You tried to come? I was surprised and strangely pleased. Yes, he said, I wanted to surprise you. I couldn't help the small smile that spread across my face. Thank you. Unfortunately, the airline had other plans, but Mother told me you were excellent. I also saw you on the Patterson show. I must admit, I was a bit envious of him getting to sit so close to you while I was stuck in a hotel room in New York. It's good to hear your voice, I murmured. I was wondering if it's possible. Yes, I quickly responded. I haven't even asked yet, he chuckled. I don't care, the answer is yes. I was going to ask you to dinner, but maybe I should come up with another question? Dinner would be lovely. I know you're probably busy tonight, but tonight would be wonderful. Really? Yes. He was surprised when I gave him Charlotte's address, but he arrived promptly, dressed in a dark suit, white shirt with thin blue stripes, and elegant cufflinks. I wore a black dress with a low neckline, and his mouth dropped open when he saw me. I will never get used to it, he murmured. What? How beautiful you are. I blushed, my heart swelling so much it felt like it could burst. I smiled up at him, adjusting his tie. You're rather dishy yourself. He had picked an excellent restaurant, and I held his hand as we followed the waiter to our table. People glanced at us, but I didn't care, smiling at Alexander as he held my chair for me. We spoke of many things, his promotion, Paris, and I found myself barely able to eat. My mother mentioned inviting you for a weekend, he said. I nodded. I had to put my foot down and tell her she shouldn't have done that. Oh. My thoughts raced. He didn't want me to come. He's embarrassed by me, he knows somehow. I couldn't have my mother ask a woman for me. It's just not appropriate. I see, I replied softly, staring down at my meal. I told her it's my role to invite you, he said with a smile. I would be terribly honored if you came down for a weekend. Would you be able to come next weekend? Oh yes, I said brightly, I think I should. It will, of course, be dreadfully boring. You'll probably count every minute until you can escape back to London, but I'd be terribly pleased to have you there. I can't imagine it will be boring at all. Suddenly, I wondered where I would sleep, but I quickly assumed that Alexander and his mother would be old-fashioned. Oddly, I felt like I trusted Alexander completely. Alexander smiled, pulled a small package from his inner coat pocket, and placed it on the crisp tablecloth. My heart pounded. I must apologize for not attending your Lady Macbeth. My plan to surprise you failed. It was a sweet thought, Alexander, and I had another surprise, he said, tapping the package with his finger. Here, he said with a smile, this is for you. My fingers trembled as I opened the package, carefully placing the ribbon on the tablecloth. It was a delicate bracelet, a gold band with intricate engravings on the outer surface. Alexander, I breathed, it's beautiful, but I can't accept. It's to mark the occasion of your Shakespearean triumph and to apologize for my incredibly rude remark about Crumpet. He grinned sheepishly. There's an inscription. I turned the bracelet over and read the inscription. Catherine Grant, a great actress and the thinking man's Crumpet. S.E. I giggled, impulsively kissing his hand. Thank you, Alexander, but I couldn't accept this, it's not. It's a gift, Clara, for someone I admire, someone I haven't been able to get out of my mind since I last saw her. Please accept it. Well. Please? I'll treasure this. I immediately put it on, admired it, and smiled at him. Thank you. We left the restaurant, walking hand in hand to the taxi. Good Lord, Alexander said suddenly. What? I asked, alarmed. There's a man over there taking our photograph, on that motorcycle. I'll tell him to stop immediately. Don't worry, I laughed. My knight in shining armor, I thought with a strange pride, he's so protective of me. Alexander walked me to my door. My mind was in turmoil, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted him to kiss me, while another part was screaming that he was a man, and I used to be one. No! I was still one, wasn't I? But I wanted him. It was a wonderful night, Clara, he murmured, standing close. You were fabulous, as always, and beautiful, as always, he added with that charming smile. Thank you, I whispered, my heart racing as I looked up at him. So beautiful, he breathed, moving closer. Would it be terribly forward of me to kiss you? No, no. I don't think so. He wrapped his arm around me, pulling me closer, and our lips finally met. The sensation was electric, a wave of warmth that swept through me, leaving me breathless. Then, I felt his arousal pressing against me, and it hit me all at once, I'd just kissed a man. What's more, I'd enjoyed it. Alexander stared at me, his smile widening. I've dreamed of that, he whispered. Thank you. Did the reality match the dream? I blurted, but immediately regretted it, my inner voice screaming to stop, to walk away. Even better, he replied. You must be tired. I am, and I wouldn't want to fall asleep again, I said with a weak attempt at humor, though I felt far from joking. I could watch you sleep. I wouldn't mind, Alexander said, shaking his head, as if trying to clear his thoughts. But, of course, I must go. I'll call you with details for the weekend? Please do. Good night, Clara. Good night, Alexander. The next morning, Belle called, waking me up. Hello? I said sleepily. Late night, she teased. Not really. The filming in Paris caught up with me. And someone else caught up with you, huh? She pressed. I sat up, holding the phone closer. How did she know? Well, yes, we had a lovely dinner. And a lovely kiss, I see. I snapped, fully awake. Well, seeing as you guessed. No guessing, Clara, she giggled. I saw the picture. Picture? In the newspaper, on the celebrity page. It looked like a really yummy kiss. You've got your eyes closed. It's in the newspaper? I groaned. Oh no. Look on the bright side, not every girl gets her first kiss in the newspapers. Saucy bitch. I grumbled, and she laughed heartily. Later, Belinda came over and gleefully pointed out the photograph of Alexander kissing me goodnight and giving me the bracelet at the restaurant. The photos were grainy, but everything was clear, and yes, I had my eyes closed. The beautiful Catherine Grant, renowned actress, has a new love, a mystery man who presented her with a gift at a romantic dinner for two, Belle read aloud. Was it an engagement ring? And what about that romantic kiss goodnight? Stop it! I said, throwing a cushion at her. What must poor Alexander think of this? And his mother? I suddenly panicked. I told Belle about the weekend, and she wiggled her eyebrows at me. Separate bedrooms? I ignored her. How am I going to get down there? I'll have to hire a car with a driver. I can't drive. We'll take you, Belle said. Rodney and I have been planning a weekend in the country, and we'll find a small romantic B&B. Separate bedrooms? I shot back. I hope not, she grinned. I want a dirty weekend. Later, I called Alexander. I'm so sorry, Alexander, about the photograph. Don't be, he said warmly. I'm the envy of every man in London. I'm actually quite flattered by it. I'm glad you're not upset. It's a nuisance, but... Don't worry about it, Clara. What about your mother? She doesn't read those sorts of newspapers. Of course, I called her and told her to get a copy. You didn't. I did, indeed. I'm quite tickled by the whole thing. I was feeling nervous about the upcoming weekend but couldn't bring it up with Belle, as Rodney was driving. She sensed my anxiety and squeezed my hand. I was seated in the back with my overflowing overnight cases beside me. I thought it was just for one night, Belle laughed when she saw how much I packed. I have to be prepared. Of course, she winked, and I flushed. Nothing was going to happen, right? When we arrived at the country house, my mouth dropped open as we drove past manicured lawns, beautiful gardens, and statues. This can't be it, can it? Rodney shrugged. It's the address you gave me, Clara. I'd say your boyfriend has a bob or two. I felt a small voice inside me questioning what I was doing, but I chose to ignore it. The car stopped in front of the house, and an older man in a black suit opened the door. That must be the butler, Belle murmured, and I shot her a glare. I stepped out hesitantly, with Rodney helping me carry my bags. I had chosen a charcoal gray roll-neck pullover, a simple black skirt, tights, boots, and an olive green blazer. My hair was loose and brushed, and I wore simple earrings. Trying to impress the future mother-in-law? Belle had teased when she saw me. Alexander came bounding down the stone steps and hugged me warmly. He shook Rodney's hand and kissed Belle's cheek as if they were old friends. The butler whisked my bags away before I had a chance to speak. Ring me tomorrow when you're ready to go, Belle said as she kissed my cheek goodbye. You'll be fine, she whispered in my ear before she and Rodney drove away. Mary was standing at the top of the steps, beaming as I walked up, Alexander's hand resting on my waist. Clara, she greeted me, lovely as always, kissing my cheek. I smiled nervously. Alexander, why don't you show Clara to her room? She may want to freshen up before tea. Bernard has already taken your bags upstairs. We walked slowly through the oak-paneled halls, passing walls adorned with old portraits. Well, I said, this is a lovely little weekend cottage. He grinned wryly. Perhaps I didn't give you the full picture. This place has been in the family for a very long time. And now you're going to tell me you're an earl or a lord or something? Goodness, no. Here's your room. I hope it's acceptable. My mouth dropped open when I saw the expansive room with a magnificent four-poster bed. It was a beautiful space, complete with a small attached bathroom. "Oh, it's acceptable," I said dryly. "We're having morning tea at 10 in the drawing room downstairs," he said. "Just come down when you're ready." "I might get lost." "I doubt that," he smiled. "I'm glad you came down, Clara." "I really am." He kissed my cheek and left. I found my way downstairs, where Mary greeted me with a smile. Alexander stood and pulled up my chair as I joined them. The other guests were introduced, and one woman commented that my photos didn't do me justice. "Which photograph?" a male guest asked, winking at Alexander. "The one in the newspapers?" "I was talking about the posters at the tube station," the woman replied, glaring at her husband. "I haven't seen her act, unfortunately. George doesn't like the theater." "I think Clara has just completed a movie," Alexander said, steering the conversation away from the subject of photos. That sparked a chorus of questions, and I politely explained my recent work. Tea was served, and I gradually faded into the background, which was a relief. Later, Alexander took me for a brisk walk around the estate. I was amazed at how vast the place was. We held hands as we strolled past the miniature lake, watching the swans and ducks. "You're not cold, are you?" he asked. "No, it's lovely. You have a beautiful home." Dinner was formal, and I wore my black dress. I noticed poor George couldn't take his eyes off my chest, which, unfortunately, his wife noticed too. Afterward, we retired to the drawing room for port or brandy. The young girl at the table, looking miserable, caught my eye. My heart went out to her as I saw her mother being rushed on by her husband. I walked over, picking her up gently. "What's your name?" "Lizzie," she said, her big eyes watching me. "What a pretty name." "I'm Clara." I sat with her in the hall, making up stories about the people in the portraits. She giggled madly at the stories and my funny voices. When her mother returned, she smiled gratefully at me and took Lizzie away. I re-entered the room, and Mary smiled at me. "Entertaining our younger guest?" "She seemed a little sad," I said. Mary handed me a port and took my arm, leading me to a quieter corner. "I'm so glad you and Alexander are getting along," she said, giving me a knowing look. "I quite enjoyed the newspaper photograph," she added with a twinkle in her eye. "I don't know why they follow me around," I murmured. A small voice inside me questioned what I was doing, but I chose to ignore it. The car stopped in front of the house, and an older man in a black suit opened the door. "That must be the butler," Belle murmured, and I shot her a glare. I hesitated before stepping out, with Rodney assisting me with my bags. I had chosen a charcoal gray roll-neck sweater, a simple black skirt, tights, boots, and an olive green blazer. My hair was loose and brushed, and I wore simple earrings. Trying to impress the future mother-in-law? Belle had teased when she saw me. Alexander came rushing down the stone steps, pulling me into a hug. He shook Rodney's hand and kissed Belle's cheek as if they were old friends. The butler whisked my bags away before I could speak. "Call me tomorrow when you're ready to leave," Belle said, kissing my cheek goodbye. "You'll be fine," she whispered in my ear, and I waved as they drove away. Mary was waiting at the top of the steps, smiling as I walked up, Alexander's hand on my waist. "Clara," she greeted me, lovely as always, kissing my cheek. I smiled nervously. "Alexander, why don't you show Clara to her room? She might want to freshen up before tea. Bernard's already taken your bags upstairs." We strolled slowly through the oak-paneled halls, passing walls lined with portraits of, I assumed, Alexander's ancestors. "Well," I said, "this is a nice little weekend house." He grinned. "Perhaps I didn't give you the full picture. This place has been in the family for a long time. And now you're going to tell me you're an earl, a lord, or something." "Goodness, no. Here's your room. I hope it's acceptable." I gasped when I entered the room. It was huge, with a magnificent four-poster bed. The room was beautiful and even had a small attached bathroom. "Oh, it's acceptable," I said dryly. "We're having morning tea at 10 in the drawing room downstairs. Just come down when you're ready." "I might get lost." "I doubt it," he smiled. "I'm glad you came down, Clara." "I really am." He kissed my cheek and left. I found my way downstairs, where Mary greeted me with a smile. Alexander stood, pulling out my chair for me as I joined them. There were other guests, and one woman commented that my photos didn't do me justice. "Which photograph?" a male guest asked, winking at Alexander. "The one in the newspapers?" "I was talking about the posters at the tube station," the woman replied, glaring at her husband. "I haven't seen her act, unfortunately. George doesn't like the theater." "I think Clara has just completed a movie," Alexander said, smoothly redirecting the conversation. That sparked a chorus of questions, and I politely explained my recent work. Tea was served, and I was relieved to become less of a focal point. Later, Alexander took me for a brisk walk around the estate. I was amazed at the size of it. We held hands as we strolled around the small lake, watching the swans and ducks. "You're not cold, are you?" he asked. "No, it's lovely. You have a beautiful home." Dinner was formal, and I wore my black dress. I couldn't help but notice poor George couldn't take his eyes off my chest, a detail his wife clearly noticed as well. Afterward, we retired to the drawing room for port or brandy. I noticed a young girl at the table, looking incredibly bored. My heart went out to her as I watched her mother rush her husband along. I walked over and picked her up. "What's your name?" "Lizzie," she said, her big eyes watching me. "What a pretty name." "I'm Clara." We sat in the hall while I made up stories about the people in the portraits. She giggled madly at my funny voices. When her mother returned, she smiled gratefully at me before taking Lizzie away. I walked back in, and Mary smiled at me. "Entertaining our younger guest?" "She seemed a little sad," I said. Mary handed me a port and took my arm, leading me to a quieter corner. "I'm so glad you and Alexander are getting along," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I quite enjoyed the newspaper photograph," she added with a smile. "I don't know why they follow me around," I murmured. I sat in the bath, staring at myself, half man, half woman, feeling like a freak. The reality hit me hard, brought to my attention by Mary and Alexander, something I had been trying to ignore for the past 6 months. I had been foolish, dreaming impossible dreams, and now the truth had caught up with me. Charlotte and Belle listened patiently as I explained everything. Belle pointed out, not all women can have children. "It's not automatic, you know." "I know," I replied quietly. I just realized that I was getting involved in something that had no future. "It's impossible." I was dreaming. I ended it before it even began, and now I'm going to move on, be happy with what I've got. And then I burst into tears again. "Of course, you are," Charlotte said, her voice dripping with irony. Belle smiled softly. "I'm sure you'll feel better in the morning." We all hugged, and I tried to get some rest. I slept badly, but deep down, I knew I had to stop hiding. I couldn't stay locked in the townhouse forever. Charlotte seemed to sense my unrest and shifted into business mode. "Luke and I found an apartment in Saint Germain. It's beautiful. We'll go over and look at it this week. The premiere of the movie is Friday night in Paris, so it's perfect timing. Belle's working on the dress for the premiere. She suggests a French designer to make a good impression with the media. Any questions?" I shook my head. Charlotte was like a whirlwind, and that's how the week went, busy and full of plans. Both Charlotte and Belle kept me on my toes, except for the moments when I was visiting Helen and the psychologists. Their files on me were growing thicker by the day. Helen adjusted my medication slightly and, after examining me, noted that my body was, to the outside observer, almost entirely female. We both knew what almost meant. I discussed the situation with both doctors, explaining my overreaction. The psychologist asked if my decision to end things with Alexander was an attempt to avoid becoming a woman. Had I changed my mind? No, I answered firmly. I am a woman. I feel like one. That's how I see myself. I honestly can't remember what it felt like to be male. The apartment in Paris was stunning, and I signed the papers immediately. Luke asked if I would do interviews with the French media for the English woman. I agreed and spent the day doing interviews in French, which impressed the journalists and TV crews. My photos began appearing in newspapers, and it seemed the French media had really taken to me, especially because I spoke fluent French and had chosen to live in Paris. The premiere in Paris was a glittering affair. It took me forever to walk down the red carpet, and the movie received glowing reviews. Luke and Charlotte were pleased. You're a huge star in France now, Clara, Luke told me in French. They love you. Afterward, we went back to London to promote the movie for its English premiere. The event was just as glamorous, though some journalists seemed irritated that I was moving to France. Don't forget, you're British, Clara, Laura Wood reminded me. Of course not, I smiled. I was lounging around Charlotte's townhouse when she came in with Sarah Wright. After greeting each other, Sarah glanced at Charlotte and then at me. Clara, I need a big favor. Anything, I said, smiling. No, really, wait until you hear it. Silken Memories is going to be made into a movie right here in London, and I was hoping you'd play Simone. The big favor is that I want to direct it, and the backers will only agree if I can get the original cast. Humpy will agree, and I'm sure Simon will once you agree. I know I'm not experienced as a director, but I know this play, and I know how it should look on film. Yes, I'll do it, I said immediately. Sarah stopped, eyes wide. Really? Of course. I'd love to. Charlotte took care of the contracts, and I signed right away. Humpy signed quickly, but Simon had issues. The American studio he was contracted with refused to release him. Damn Yanks! Charlotte exclaimed. Sarah scowled as we sat in a cafe, sipping coffee. I was used to signing autographs by now, and I decided I wasn't going to hide anymore. I was going to live my life. You should be able to negotiate, Charlotte, I said calmly. You represent Simon and me. And Luke, she added, blushing slightly. Oh really? I raised an eyebrow. Well, he likes the way I handle things. Sarah and I burst into laughter, and Charlotte blushed even more when she realized what she had just said. Then I had an idea. What about a trade? A trade? What do you mean? They release Simon for Silken Memories, and in return, they get an American movie with Simon, directed by Luke. Not bad, Charlotte said, narrowing her eyes. But it needs more. Such as? A romantic comedy starring Simon Thompson and Catherine Grant, directed by Luc Benoit. It'll be great for all your careers. Sarah looked at me hopefully. Okay, I said with a smile. Deal. The script for Vital Statistics appeared soon after, and I began to wonder if the Americans had wanted this all along. I spent 4 weeks in Paris, settling into my new apartment. It was strange being recognized more here than in London, but the French were oddly indifferent. They'd smile, nod, or call out a greeting, but they gave me space. The paparazzi, however, were always nearby, snapping pictures as I shopped or sipped coffee. It became a game. I'd give them a good shot, and they'd leave me alone for a while. One afternoon, as I was organizing my bookshelves, my phone rang. Clara? Alexander's voice came down the line, sending a wave of warmth through me, straight to my knees. Alexander, I answered quietly, almost breathlessly. I'm sorry, Clara. I hope I'm not interrupting. I can call it another time if it's inconvenient. No, it's fine. How are you? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm healthy and busy. I heard you've moved to Paris, he said, sounding like he was trying to sound professional, but I could hear the nervousness beneath his words. Yes, I'm still unpacking. I see, he said. There was a long pause before he added, Look, I've been thinking about your letter, and to be honest, I'm a little confused. I must be missing something. I thought we had strong feelings for each other, and I can't help but feel regret that things ended like this. I'm probably being a bore, but I need to know, what did I do? I cleared my throat. Alexander, we did have strong feelings, but we were moving too quickly. You're right, I was too eager. Foolish of me. I can slow down, Clara. I'm happy to take things as slow as you need. There's more, though, I said gently, my voice breaking slightly. Oh. You remember the conversation about children? I asked, heart racing as I tried to hold back tears. Yes, he replied, a soft note of concern in his voice. I paused, then said, my words trembling, I can't have children, Alexander. Medically, there's nothing that can be done. There was a long, painful silence. My tears began to fall. I have to finish unpacking now. Thank you for calling. It was nice to hear your voice. The conversation left me feeling hollow. It was a relief to finally say the words, but it didn't make the reality any easier to bear. Afterward, filming Silken Memories went by in a blur. The first few weeks were intense, with Sarah pushing us hard to get the best performances. But the time off was fun, and when Charlotte suggested Simon and I go shopping, I couldn't resist. He agreed eagerly, which made me a little suspicious. What's going on, Charlotte? I asked as we headed out. I thought it would be good for publicity, she replied. A few shots of you and Simon together, good for both Silken Memories and vital statistics. Simon and I exchanged a look before I shrugged. Why not? Shopping wasn't Simon's idea of fun, but he perked up every time he saw paparazzi. He'd suddenly become affectionate, holding my arm or struggling to carry my shopping bags. One time, he sat outside a store while I tried on skirts. When I came out, he sighed with relief. That's it, all done, he said. Thank God, I need a drink. He put his arm around me as we walked down the street, and I glanced around. Are there photographers about? You never know, he said, grinning, and planted a soft kiss on my cheek. The next day, photographs of us appeared in the papers. Catherine Grant has moved on to a new love, the headline read. Out with the old, in with the new, Simon Thompson. I threw the paper down in frustration. They make me sound like a tart, I muttered. It's just publicity, Charlotte said, trying to calm me, but I wasn't buying it. The filming wrapped up, and I was happy to return to my apartment in Paris and relax. I spent the next few weeks doing nothing, just living a normal life. I talked to my neighbors, went to the market, and sat at cafes reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. Alexander hadn't called, and I knew he'd walked away after finding out I couldn't have children, but a small part of me still hoped the phone would ring and it would be him. The English Woman had become a huge hit in France, and it was starting to do well in other countries too. I should have been thrilled with the success, but I couldn't bring myself to care much about it. I was happy for Luke and the team, but I felt a constant undercurrent of sadness. I'd talked about it with the doctors after Silken Memories ended. Do you love him? Helen had asked gently. I spent 4 weeks in Paris, settling into my new apartment. I was recognized more here than in London, but the French were a bit different. They'd smile, nod, or call out a greeting but always gave me space. The paparazzi were persistent, snapping pictures of me in the market or at cafes, but after getting a good shot, they'd usually leave me alone for a while. One afternoon, while I was arranging books on my shelves, the phone rang. Clara? Alexander's voice came through the line, sending a shiver of warmth down my spine. Alexander, I said softly. I'm sorry to call it a bad time. I can ring back if you prefer. No, it's fine, how are you? I'm healthy and staying busy. I heard you've moved to Paris? Yes, I'm still unpacking. I see. Look, he continued, now sounding more formal, I've been thinking about your letter, and honestly, I'm a bit confused. I thought we had strong feelings for each other. I'm sorry for how things ended so abruptly. I feel like I'm missing something here. Could you explain what I did wrong? I cleared my throat. Alexander, you're right about the strong feelings, but we were moving too fast. You're absolutely right. I was too eager, I know. I'm sorry, Clara. I'll slow down, take as much time as you need. There's more, though, I said, trying to steady my voice. Oh. Do you remember our conversation about children? Yes. I paused, feeling a lump form in my throat. I can't have children, Alexander. Medically, it's impossible. There's nothing that can be done. There was a long silence, and I could feel the tears rising. I need to unpack, I said quickly, trying to keep my voice bright. Thank you for calling. It was nice hearing from you. I set the phone down and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all. Alexander had known about my medical condition, but hearing it again made the reality hit even harder. Filming Silken Memories flew by. Sarah was driving us hard, pushing for great performances, but the time off was fun. Then, Charlotte suggested Simon and I go shopping. He agreed eagerly, which raised my suspicions. What's going on, Charlotte? I asked. I thought it would be good publicity for Silken Memories and Vital Statistics, she said with a grin. Simon and I reluctantly agreed, though Simon didn't seem to enjoy it much. But when the paparazzi appeared, he quickly became affectionate, putting an arm around me and carrying my bags. One time, he looked relieved when I came out and said, "That's it, all done." "Thank God," he said, "I need a drink." He put his arm around me again as we walked down the street. "Are the photographers around?" I asked, glancing around. "You never know," Simon said, giving me a mischievous smile. Then he kissed me on the cheek. The next day, the pictures made their way into the papers. "Catherine Grant has moved on to a new love," the headline read. "Out with the old, in with the new, Simon Thompson." I groaned. "They make me sound like a tart," I muttered. "It's just publicity," Charlotte reassured me, but I still grumbled. After wrapping up Silken Memories, I returned to my apartment in Paris, ready for a break. For the next few weeks, I did absolutely nothing. I chatted with neighbors, shopped at the markets, and spent afternoons reading in cafes. Even though Alexander hadn't called, and I knew he'd moved on after learning about my condition, I still found myself hoping he'd ring. The Englishwoman was a major success in France and began doing well in other countries too. I should have been ecstatic, but I couldn't summon the energy to care. A constant feeling of sadness hung over me, and I discussed it at length with the doctors after finishing Silken Memories. "Do you love him?" Helen asked me softly. "I don't think you should go back on stage just yet, Clara. You need to take a different direction." "Yes, I think you're right," I replied. "I've gone through the scripts you've received." "And?" "Most of the movie scripts are terrible for various reasons, but there's one," she said, sliding a script across the table. It was sent by Luc Benoit. I looked up, surprised. "Really?" "He called me. He's been searching for a woman to play the leading role in his new film. Then he saw you on the Patterson show." "I read it, and it's good. It'll be in French, and I hear you speak French fluently?" Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "At least one benefit of a lost education and an ear for languages and accents, I suppose." "What's it about?" "A young man sees a beautiful woman and falls in love with her. She doesn't notice him, and he starts chasing her, almost stalking her as she goes about her life. They eventually meet, and he finds out she loves someone else. It's bittersweet, very French, but Charlotte grinned, no nude scenes, no kissing. I skimmed the script and agreed to do it. Charlotte made the arrangements. Luc needed me for only 2 weeks in Paris, and I was thrilled about spending time in a city where no one knew me. Belle, Charlotte, and I went, and filming was great fun. Luc was a talented director who coaxed a performance from me that I wasn't sure I could have done on my own. The romantic comedy, called The Englishwoman, turned out to be a fantastic experience, and I fell in love with Paris. I want to live here, I told Charlotte one night after we finished shooting. Why not? She shrugged. It's a great city. Are you sure? Belle asked. It's close to England, and no one knows me here, I replied. Plus, it's a beautiful place. The movie will pay for a good apartment here, Belle said. I can help you find one. Thanks, but how well do you know Paris? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Not that well, Charlotte admitted, but Luc knows it inside and out. I laughed. Oh, I see. Are you getting serious with Luc? Charlotte shrugged. I don't know, but he's different from anyone I've ever met. I hope it works out, I said, kissing her on the cheek. I returned to London after filming, ready to relax in my Paris apartment. I hadn't heard from Alexander, and though I knew he had likely moved on when he learned I couldn't have children, I still hoped he'd call. The Englishwoman was a huge success, not just in France but also in the UK, Canada, and the US. I should have been thrilled, but a sense of loss and sadness lingered. I shared my feelings with the doctors during my visits after finishing Silken Memories. You love him, don't you? Helen asked gently. I could just be in the background. Clara, I'm really going to worry like crazy. I'm doing this on my own, Charlotte. Just cover for me and don't tell Belle. But she has enough to focus on with her wedding. Just tell her I'm off traveling or something. I'm sure you'll think of something. Charlotte gave me a tight hug. Good luck. God, you're brave. I smiled at her words, though I was terrified of the whole process, but I had to do it. Clara? No, I said firmly, you can't. No, it's not that. I'm debating whether I should tell you. Tell me what? Alexander called me about the new posters they want to do. Did he? My heart raced, and my legs felt weak. Well, that was just an excuse. Byron could have called. He wanted to know how you were. He did? I tried to keep my voice steady, not letting my happiness show. What did you tell him? I told him you were fabulous, of course. What do you take me for? I smiled at that. Thanks, Charlotte. What else did he say? He said, in his formal way, that he expected that you would be strong and move on. He admires that or something. God, he can go on. Yes, he does, I agreed. But I must admit, I found it a little sweet. He also asked me to give you his regards. Okay, thanks, Charlotte.